Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, February 18th. Please stand and join us for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we've got a very busy agenda this evening. We've got a review meeting, regular session executive meeting minutes from January 21st and February 4th. We have a dog hearing scheduled. We have a couple of resignations from two of our boards. Discussion of known electioneering policy during early and absentee voting. A discussion on funding request from the Disability Commission. And we have a review and application for a one-day liquor license, authorize expenditure in excess of original approval, which is snow and ice budget, authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Balthazar Contractors in the amount of $846,115. And we have some budgets to overview, or review, I should say, from DPW, Council of Aging, Code Enforcement, and the Town Clerk. Also have recognition, town manager's report, new business, public comment, and we will be going into executive session. And after we recess executive session, we will be coming back into open session to discuss agenda item 11.1, authorize the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Okay, so beginning. Review regular session executive meeting minutes from January 21st and February 4th.
I read them. They look good.
Everybody get a chance to look them over? Everything looks good?
Yeah.
All right.
I make a motion that we approve the regular and executive session meeting minutes from January 21st and February 4th.
Second.
Make that unanimous action. Okay, the next item is the dog hearing. I actually don't have the gavel. Need my gavel.
You have to have the gavel.
I do.
I think so, for an official.
All right.
Now you have a gavel.
Superb. Thank you. Time, I'm not sure exactly what time it is, but we will begin. 7:09. We'll begin and open the dog hearing. Regarding this issue, Maureen, I think you need to recuse yourself.
Recuse, yep.
All right.
But I still have to be in here.
All right.
Yeah, I think you should probably sit there, and that might come to the table.
Yep. Okay. So this hearing is in regard to a dog in town named Maverick. Our animal control officer is here. The dog belongs to Maureen's daughter, Jen, I believe is the owner of the dog. So I will pass it off to you. Please introduce yourself, name and address, and your position with the town.
Mike Moran, 102 High Street, Upton Animal Control Officer. Back in September, Jen called me, said Maverick bit somebody in the face, which was Karen Ryan. Issued a quarantine order, a ticket, hospital sends paperwork like always to quarantine. Jen complied to everything. Of course, rabies certificate was up to date, dog's license, no problems. And then Jen called me again on January 20th that he bit somebody else in the face. So I told him to quarantine the dog, just like usual. Ticket was issued, they paid that, dog's licensed for this year already. And then you guys got a statement from two of the people there. I wasn't there, so I was going by what the people told me, but it's the second bite in town. We have a hearing. This was a tough one. Just so you guys know, I am friends with the family, so it's very tough. For being a selectman, gotta follow through with everything. Can't brush under the mat, as you guys know. And so, like I said, the statements are here. Nicole went to the hospital. got stitches in the face. I think Derek's got a picture of it. I sent the picture right on the phone. Yeah. They get statements, so at this point is how you want to label the dog. I've been around the dog since 8 weeks old. Never seen aggression, but something is triggering them. They did hire a professional trainer who's going to figure it out, what's going on. And from there, see what we're going to do. You know, I don't think he's a dangerous dog. You know, I think he's a nuisance dog at the moment until we figure out what the behavioral problem is. Because if you're around him, I tell you, he's not a behavioral problem. It's the weirdest thing this happened. I mean, I've chased him and he runs from me barking, doesn't come near you. Something's triggering it. It's gonna be this gentleman's point to find out what it is. And until he figures it out, I feel, keep him on a leash until this gentleman, this professional, figures out what's going on and what it's gonna take to fix the dog. 'Cause the dog is not what you think. He's a big dog. He's 180 pounds, but he's not like some of the other dogs that dealt with a killer. He's just not that. There's something triggering, and this gentleman's is gonna figure out what's going on, you know? Sorry about my voice. I got a head cold.
No, you're just fine.
One thing I just wanted to make note of, this is in regard to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157. And within that, there looks like there's a couple of different definitions regarding nuisance dog or dangerous dog.
Yep.
In this particular instance, how do you characterize the dog? What do you?
I think he's a nuisance until we figure out what's going on. He's not what you, it's weird. Everybody has seen him. He's not what you think he is. He's a big baby, and something triggered these two things off. I wasn't there for either one, so I don't have a clue what to tell you. This gentleman would probably tell us more, because he deals with dogs all the time, but something triggered off this twice. He's not like that. He's just a big old baby. What am I gonna say to you?
There's an awful lot of information that we were given with regard to this case.
Yeah.
We've both had a chance, I'm assuming we've both had a chance to read through it all.
Yeah.
And there are pictures, so do have an idea of
Yeah.
what the dog looks like, how big the dog is, and as you said, it's, you can't tell, I can't tell from a picture, but
Yeah.
obviously,
Well, I'm telling you,
it's a big
he's not
dog.
what you think the average bite dog would be like. He's not like that. Mm-hmm. Something triggered these two times, and until we can figure out what's going, we gotta get to the bottom of it.
Okay. So I think the best way to proceed is we can ask Mr. Moran some questions if we have any, and then you may have
Gentlemen,
some,
questions?
I recognize some other faces in the crowd, so there may be some other people that would like to speak to the matter, so maybe we could just take them in order. Brett, do you have any questions for the animal control officer?
No, I mean, I read through all of the information regarding both of the incidences that got reported, and assuming they're accurate, and I have no reason to believe that they're not accurate, it sounds like these are both scenarios where people went into the dog's space, like really close into the dog's space. And again, I'm not a dog expert. I look forward to hearing from the dog expert, but I can tell you that based on what I read and based on my basic understanding of animal behavior, this isn't an aggressive dog.
Nope.
These are, from the dog's perception, aggressive people.
Yep.
And so the dog's sitting there, either laying down, gets bumped into, the person lays down next to the dog, whether they bumped into it or not, it doesn't matter, lays down next to a dog and sticks their face in the dog's face, that's aggressive behavior. Dog's sitting in a car, looking out the window, you stick your face in the window and put your hands on the dog's head and stick your face in its face, that's aggressive behavior. This isn't a dog that's chasing people, it's not a dog that's baring its teeth, it's not growling, it's not running at people. It's a dog that's, a big, confident, strong dog, which is what it needs to be to work on a farm. I consider it a working dog. There's a lot of acreage there. There's a lot of animals there. There's a lot of land there. We know there are bobcats. We know there are coyotes. And there's certainly no justification for a dog not behaving well. But this isn't a dog that's not behaving well, in my mind. this is a dog that's behaving normally and people that aren't behaving well. So that's my perspective.
I think it's unusual in the case that it looks like on both circumstances, people actually were kind of hugging or trying to kiss the dog, which is, I guess you'd say questionable. However, I think if there is anybody in attendance that happens to be either Miss Ryan or Mr. Wolf, if either one is here, perhaps there's some different testimony that we would need to hear. If there's anything maybe contrary to that.
Nope, neither one are here, so.
Pardon?
I said neither one are here, neither
Neither one are
is
here,
Mr. Barini is not here either.
So just so that we make sure we cover all the bases, so neither one of the, victims in this case that were bitten, neither one is here at this point in time.
No, the only witness would be Jake. Campbell, he was there for the second bite. That's it, otherwise.
Okay.
No one else there.
I was going to say, I think if we go in order, we can talk to, is it Mr. Khalil, is that what?
Sir.
All right. Would you mind coming up and you can pull your chair right up to the desk there? Sure, that'd be great. And just introduce yourself, where you live, and...
I'm Master Trainer Stephen Khalil. I'm the Director of Training Operations for All American Canine Academy. Doing this about 20 years. In all the 20 years, we have training the owners. And much like you were saying, with the people behavior. Do I need to sit? Okay.
Yeah, you can sit,
Okay,
sure.
no problem. All right, so what I wanted to touch base on is, you're correct, it's not a bad dog. Every day for the last 20 years, we get phone calls of my dog's aggressive, my dog's this, and I say, hold on, let's change the word aggressive to insecure. Does it make more sense? And they say, well, yeah, of course it does. Like you said, so when you go to hug a dog, okay, you are then forcing the animal into the natural animal instinct. Okay? It is no longer your baby, your son. It's an animal with teeth that acts off their instinct. From my understanding of my proper assessment and my evaluation of the dog is, it's like I said, it's not a bad dog, aggressive dog. There's really no such thing, technically, if we want to break it down into a science of an aggressive dog. Because when people tell me the dog bit, my question is, why? And they say, well, I don't know why. All right, so if you don't know why, how are you labeling a dog aggressive? Because if you don't know why, you don't understand animal behavior. If you don't understand animal behavior, you have no reason to be able to properly assess that said behavior. So it goes hand in hand. When both incidents, from my understanding, is that there was alcohol involved. Okay? Alcohol will be a contributing factor to an animal's behavior and instinct. Much like if you back a skunk into a corner, the skunk's going to raise its tail, it's getting in that drive, right? Every animal has it. A dolphin has it, a penguin has it, a bird has it. They all have the instinct. It's whether or not you are educated on the signs that are given before the bite. So you're right on point when you say that it's human error. It is not dog error. The Cane Corso, we can go back to centuries, back in the 60s, when they were, or when they were used as police dogs, or Roman Empire, they were used as protection dogs in the military. The reason they were used for that is because they understand their drive and know how to use it, right? You see police dogs. How many times do police dogs bite somebody, and then they tell them to get off and they don't let go? And then they go run over and have to yank them off. The reason for that is because the owner doesn't have control of the dog. It's very, very simple, okay? These incidences happen when the dog was in its environment, and let's just call a spade here. When a dog is in the vehicle, and you reach your hand in the vehicle, unlawful to just reach in someone's vehicle, okay? If you reach in my truck, you're getting bit. It's just the way it's gonna be, okay? If I reach my hand into someone's purse and get cut, why was I reaching into that purse? There was no authority to reach into the purse. And both incidences, from my understanding, is alcohol involved. So not only is alcohol involved, but you're missing all those signs that lead up to the bite. Like you said, the dog's a good dog. You don't know where it's coming from. I'll explain where it's coming from. A scientific explanation, okay? When you back a dog into a corner, or the vet comes into the vet office with the dog and it's scared, right? You say aggressive because you see an animal with teeth bearing teeth. But if you change the word to scared, now it's different, right? Now it makes more sense. So if I lean into a dog trying to hug it, okay, whether I'm intoxicated or not, my idea is I'm hugging the dog. Their idea is back away. And when they're giving several warning signs on the way to you reaching there, it triggers a bite. Now, the instance from what I understand is for however many seconds or so, approximately 20 seconds, let's just say, you're rubbing that dog's face. Just because they're allowing you to do it doesn't mean that they're tolerating it. They don't like it. And if the reporter believes says that the tail was wagging. Also common mistake that people make is they think if the tail wags, the dog's happy. But think about this. When we smile, it doesn't always mean we're happy either, right? So just from my professional assessment, even over the phone, right? I do this every day. The dog is not a liability, okay? Both times the dog has bitten, it's been human error, and there's a lot of evidence pointing towards that. The reason I can tell you is as an animal behaviorist and doing this 20 years as a certified master dog trainer, okay, it's not like the dog just got bored and just ran up and bit somebody. Like you said, it's not running around chasing things. I was just in that home half an hour ago, right? I was just up in his face. Now, I'm a big guy. I'm sorry, I just got back from the gym. I have a bunch of pre-workout still left in me. So I'm a big guy. I talk with my hands a lot. People see like they get nervous when I kind of move towards them. If anything's going to trigger that drive, I was just rubbing his face. I reenacted all the situations that dog could have possibly bit in and couldn't trigger a drive. Also the fact that I've been training protection dogs for the last 12 years. My job as a decoy is to trigger that dog to bite, to activate that drive. So much like when a cat chases a laser pointer, right? You get that laser pointer out, their eyes get dilated, they start moving, everyone knows about that. What that is the activation of the cat's prey drive, the instinct to chase. They don't care whether that red dot is a squirrel or a red dot, it's still the rapid movement going by triggers the drive, which is when we do protection dogs, we look at them, get a little stare, and we start bolting. We trigger the instinct to chase, which is what protection dogs are trained to do. They're trained to chase, take that man down. They don't realize they're biting a human. They don't realize what they're actually doing. They're playing the game. Go grab that sleeve and bring it back to the owner. That's all they really know. So, the bite is always triggered. Always. Now, whether you recognize those signs, that's on you. And being intoxicated, you're definitely not going to recognize the signs.
Let me just slow you down for just a second.
Sure.
A question I have now, this particular dog, and I read it earlier, but I cannot recall the breed of the dog.
It's a Cane Corso.
Cane Corso.
The Cane Corso is an Italian Mastiff.
Okay.
Like I said, they were used in the Roman Empire for their amazing drive.
So my question is there anything in the history of that dog or the breed, what that dog was originally bred for that would trigger? Well, I'm just curious, is that dog a protection dog? Is that dog a working dog?
The dog is a dog.
Fighting
they
dog?
They don't know what they're bred for. That particular dog, people say to me all the time, well, I've had Dalmatians my whole life, but this one's different. Right, because you have a different Dalmatian. Not every dog is different. You can't sit there and say, well, the breed is this. You can't. You can't say that. The dog is the dog. Mm-hmm. I have a brother, he looks just like me. Doesn't mean we're the same person, right? It's not about whether the breed of dog is meant to do something, right? It's not about that.
I would say to you, that's contrary to what I've always been taught. A dog is bred to do a certain thing. A greyhound's built to race. You might say a pit bull's built to fight.
Right.
You might say that hunting dogs, for instance, are built to hunt. Right? If you bring a Springer Spaniel out in the woods, it's going to scare up a bird.
Right.
So my only question, I guess, is every dog typically has a particular specialty that it was bred for.
No, the dog's drive varies. So what you're describing is the whole intent of breeding a dog, but just like police dogs, 8 out of 10 police dogs get rejected for work, right? Because that particular dog doesn't have the drive to do it, okay? That greyhound, they lose, they dismiss him, get another dog, because that dog doesn't have the drive to do it. Everything you're saying, you can't sit there and say, well, this dog is bred to do something because that's the history of the breed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be rejected for their jobs. That what you have to look at is the drive of the dog. And so many people get confused between the personality of the dog and drive. Example, This dog is a sweet dog, but he bites. Okay, sweet is describing the personality. The bite is the drive. You can't confuse the two, right? Well, my daughter, she's the sweetest thing, but she got in trouble in school a couple weeks ago. Doesn't mean she's a bad kid. She's made a bad decision. But why did she make the bad decision? And we can break this down. It's neither here nor there. We can sit there and go back to the science of the dog. We can go back to the jackal and the coyote and you know, we can go back to how dogs were bred. That's completely irrelevant. Yes, we know the connotation.
Yeah, could you hold up just a minute?
I have a question. In your opinion, is there a way, even in these situations, to train a dog to not follow its instinct to bite, right? Like,
Sure.
like
By giving instruction.
So you can
I
teach,
do it every single
you
day
can
of the
help
week.
sort of remediate this. So even though the dog is a good dog, the dog exhibits great behavior, the dog is being approached and made to be very uncomfortable and insecure, it's a human problem, it's not a dog problem, but there are still steps you can take
Right.
to train the dog to
I'll give you an example
be
of
less
that.
triggered, for
I'll
lack
give
of
you
a
an
better
example.
word.
You're walking your dog down the street, okay? Your dog sees another dog and it starts to rah, 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 rah. Oh, my dog's aggressive or scared, okay? So now when you see that, okay, most trainers, and this is where, like you said, you've been led to believe, the whole country, the whole world has got a misunderstanding of dogs here, because if we break it down to why, if you start asking why, you're going to answer your own question. So when a dog is lunging at another dog, most trainers will say, watch me, and they get the dog to look at them, the dog walks by, and then they praise them. But you're praising them for being distracted from the issue, rather than actually telling them, watch that dog, and then there's going to be a negative consequence if it's a negative action. So there's a negative reaction for every negative action, and then there's a positive action if they choose to stay calm and let the dog walk by. So the way we train the owners is we put them in that particular situation, which would trigger the drive, and we correct them for the wrongdoing. But a lot of problems, what's happening with all these other trainers out there, they don't deal with these type of problems because they don't understand the problem. So what do is they avoid the problem. So in your question is, can I train the owner how to put these dogs in the situation and have control of the situation at all times? Of course. We're actively doing it. And she's demonstrated, we're only 2 weeks into training, and this dog, so for example, if you knock on the door and the dog charges the door, doesn't mean they're aggressive to the person at the door. Let's say, for example, the mailman. Mailman comes to your house 6 days a week. How many people here know that a dog, they have a friend's dog or somebody that barks every time the mailman comes over, right? Every time the dog barks, the mailman goes to the next house. The dog doesn't realize that the mail just has to go to the next house. He has to keep moving. He understands that when he barks, the mailman goes away, which then reinforces the behavior of him charging the door, because his technique, when he's scared, that technique becomes effective. Much like children, when a baby cries and you go get them out of the crib, what do you think is going to happen? Every single time they cry, you're going to go get them out of the crib. It's a learned and developed behavior until it is corrected. The only way to correct it is learn the proper technique, which Jen has hired me voluntarily, right? She's paid, what, $2,500 to have us train her. That's a lot of money to invest in your dog. You have to really care. There's people that call me, the assessment fee could be $275, and no, I'm all set. They'd rather take their chances and try to figure it out on their own. But if I'm driving my car and something's going wrong with it, I'm not just going to be like, well, I know what it is, and just guess, right?
Is part of it to actually explain to people that are around the dog, like, don't put your face in the dog's face?
Control the environment, certainly, sure. Right, absolutely.
Right, because like they're not around when the dog's in the hallway laying on the floor taking a nap and someone walks by and it's dark and
Correct.
everybody's sleeping and they go down and lay next to the dog and stick their face in the dog's face. Like,
That's
no
completely
owner can manage
error.
that.
Well, no, that's not owner error, that's the person
Human
who
error,
lets it
right.
Human error, right?
So it's probably just coaching people that are around the dog, like, hey, you know,
Right, I'll
this
give
is
you another
basic dog
example.
behavior, don't stick your
I'll give
face
you
in the
another
dog's
example that
face.
happens every single day, okay? Dog goes in for a nail trim. You know, how many people have that dog that will flip out when they get a nail trim? You sit there and grab one paw, and they flip out, they try to bite you, right? What happens when the groomer says, forget it, send him home? You train that dog that if he flashes around a little bit, he's getting out. Rather than just taking a couple minutes, right? Because people get frustrated. They're like, oh, this dog's sketchy, right? Rather than just applying a technique, hold him down the right way, relax, get him through the problem. So the issue is that she just didn't have the knowledge of how to teach the dog how to act in certain situations. So what did she do? She hired us to go in there and show her how to do that. And I mean, that's pretty noble, especially the fact that she didn't have to. This is a voluntary action. She's learning, just like I bet a bunch of you here today are learning stuff right now, just me being in this room. Y'all gonna walk out today with more education about dogs than you did walking in here today, right? Because it comes down to animal instinct versus human emotion, right? We try to talk to these dogs like they're a child, but at the end of the day, you can call them your fur baby, your son, your daughter, but it's an animal with teeth in your home.
Typically, how long would this process take? Now, you said that she's hired you, you've got, what does it take? Is it a
So I
six-month
can give you
process,
an
a 1 year?
example. We have a dog that one of our clients has, I want to say, it's several, over 5 or 6 dog bites, right? And it's all family members, so they don't really like report it. It's just kind of like it goes on. From that process, we put them in the environment, we go out in public, we go in the real world and train them in the environment they need improvement in. 4 weeks is our typical graduation. So from start to finish, on a scale of 1 to 10, whether there's 10 being like this dog is like unrehabilitatable, to 1 being it's the sweetest dog in the world, to 1. Like realistically, all of these issues, when a dog bites, it's all about, okay, like I said, we go right to why did the dog bite? So in my professional assessment, I have seen a lot worse. I mean, you want to see aggressive dogs, come to work with me. Come walk in the homes that I walk into.
I think what I'm just trying to figure out is what does typically that period of time look like? Do you think it takes 6 months?
It varies how you learn. Are you a hands-on learner? Is it something I have to repeat instructions to
What
you?
you're seeing now, the amount of time that you've spent right now with Jen and the dog and the family, what do you see that timetable looking like?
2 more weeks.
Pardon?
2 more weeks, that dog will be, I could bring that dog in here in 2 weeks and do a live demonstration in the middle of this room right now. Right now I can, never mind in 2 weeks, right? And it's because she's educated on the behavior. Problem is, if you're not educated on the behavior, you're just guessing at what you think the dog, so like yourself, you don't know why the dog triggered. It's only because you just don't understand animal behavior. No big deal, but that's what our job is to show.
Question. Are you familiar with the Massachusetts laws around nuisance dogs versus dangerous dogs?
I did a little bit of research, I'm not familiar exactly.
Okay. So it defines, so what we have to do today is make a recommendation or a motion around a dangerousness complaint or a nuisance complaint. So, I don't think anybody thinks that this is a dangerous dog based on what I'm reading here.
So I think what we're trying to decide is nuisance.
Or non-nuisance.
Yeah,
So-
nuisance or
So I'm just gonna,
non-nuisance.
so a nuisance dog, the part of this that's relevant is a nuisance dog that has bitten a person, but the bite was not a grossly disproportionate reaction under the circumstance. So,
So what you're saying is if it's provoked, it doesn't count.
no, that's not what I'm saying. It says a nuisance dog is defined as a dog that has attacked a person. So the dog's attacked a person, so clearly the dog's attacked a person.
Defended itself against a person.
I'm just going by the
Okay.
law here, okay? So we agree about this dog.
Right.
And it says, but such a threat, the threat of the person wasn't grossly disproportionate, or the threat to the dog wasn't grossly disproportionate. So the reaction of the dog was reasonable.
It was.
So the
It
dog
was
reacted
instant.
reasonably to the
It's a
situation.
natural reaction.
Right, so
Okay.
based on this would qualify as a nuisance dog.
Right, so it's not a dangerous dog, but here's the
Right,
thing, is it
right.
really a nuisance even now? Think about it.
Well, I'm reading based on
No,
the
I know what the
definition in the
statute
law.
says,
Right, so
but
that's what we have to decide.
The statute is only
so.
as good as someone educated enough to make it. So for example, the training is only as good as the teacher providing the training. So the law is written only as well as the person educated writing the law. So what I'm saying is, I also read up, I mean, like I said.
Let me just hold you up for just a minute. I think what I want to do is, I don't want to get into too much of a back and forth. We might recall you, But I think at this point in time, I'd like to get a little more input from Mr. Moran.
Sure.
Then also, I think there's another witness here. I think we already have his statement, so I'm not
Can I
going
just add one
to
thing?
confirm. Sure.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So I'm looking up that Massachusetts dog bite statute, okay? I'm looking at one of the exceptions to the state's dog bite statute is if the victim provoked the attack in some way. Trespassing on the pet owner's property, an example would be the truck. For example, could protect the pet owner from liability of the dog bite. So regardless if the window is down in the truck, when you reach your hand beyond that, now you're trespassing. Now you're trespassing on someone's property without consent. So it's an unlawful attempt to touch the dog. Yeah, I'm not saying that she meant to trigger the bite. But if I don't mean to run a red light, I'm still going to get a ticket for it. You know, I mean to, right? The other time is, like you said, you're hugging the dog. You think you're hugging the dog, but the dog doesn't think that way. So in my eyes, both of them are provoked and a contributing factor to the exemption of the statute. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not.
Like I say, let me just try to keep things moving just a little
Sure,
bit.
sure.
You've had a lot of great information, and we may recall you, but let me just see
Sure,
if I can get
yeah.
around to some other,
That works.
another point of view here. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Great. All right. So, Michael,
Yep.
based on what I guess there's another point there. As far as, I understand personal space, I understand, impeding in the dog's personal space, entering the truck and whatnot. And I think we have a statement in here from Mr. Campbell, who's here as well. So I'm not sure that we actually need him to testify unless he has anything that he'd like to add. Is there anything that you'd like to add, other than what's here in your statement? Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there anything that you can think of that we haven't covered that you'd like to add? And then I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you see the process, what would you propose to the board as far as labeling of the dog and handling of the dog? What do you propose?
Like I said before, he's a nuisance dog, leash until he's completed his training and reevaluation, and then we're going to address it from there. But until then, I still got to worry about public safety. Chief Bradley and I had a discussion, public safety is number one. That's why we're here,
Okay.
It's a tough call, because, is it only 100%? No. Can you train Jen to be 100%? We're hoping so. But, it's a liability for the town. We're here, that's why we're here. It comes a liability.
Right.
And you guys can make a decision what you're doing. I think a nuisance dog, he's on a leash until I talk to him after his training, and we go from there with it. And I report back to you guys.
And then I guess the other question I would say is if we do label the dog a nuisance dog, and we do abide by that ideology of a leash law in the short run, Derek, I don't know if you might have any input on this. Do we revisit the topic as a board, or is that something that can be rectified between the police chief, animal control officer, and the trainer?
If you label a dog a nuisance dog, you would have to come up with a decision as to how you intend to mitigate the nuisance. So you could make that decision today, you could make a decision this evening that would be based upon facts gathered by our animal control officer in the next couple of weeks, and then report back. So you don't have to hold another public hearing if you choose not to.
Okay. I guess my question is, if we had an order to keep the dog on a leash, at what point in time would you reverse the order? Or would you, do we have that ability, or what are your thoughts?
My personal view is that the training, completion of the training is sufficient in this scenario. This is not a dog that's running around, it's not roaming free, it's not, I drive by the house every day, that I've never seen the dog in the road, I've never seen the dog on the street, it's never left the property as far as I know. It roams around the farm, it does what it does. So to me, the training is sufficient.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Okay. Did you have something you'd like to
I was
add?
just going to ask if, after the training, we couldn't revisit and do something about labeling him a nuisance dog.
Well, the only problem you run into that is if he bites again, you really can't fall back, because you already took him out of that category. That's why I said that before. You can't, you take it, you're at that point nuisance, but he bites again, now he's gonna be a dangerous dog, and that whole changed everything. But you can't say nothing and do nothing, I mean, you can, but liability falls on you guys at that point.
I guess what I'm trying to figure
So,
out is, can we-
just say, somebody does the same bad move, and it bites, it's gonna fall back on you guys.
yeah, I guess what I'm
And they
trying
wanna
to,
sue, they're gonna look at you. That's what it comes down to.
could you enforce a leash law for a period of?
Yeah, until the train's over, until the train's over,
Training's over, something
then-
along those lines.
Steve and I can discuss it, and,
Excuse me, here's the problem I have with that. So in order to put the dog in the situation to improve, so if we simply stay on the leash the entire time during the training, how are we going to condition the dog to be not a problem off the leash? That's avoiding the problem again. So in order to fix the problem, you can face the problem. No, excuse me. No, hold on, let me explain something, okay? So.
I think, let me stop you for just a second. I think I know where you're going, and it's going to be a difference of opinion. I understand that you have the pedigree. I understand it's more, I know you've got a lot more training, a lot more education regarding all that. I agree. That's true. However, I think, and I don't want to
no,
speak.
what I'm worried about is we go back to the same scenario.
Right.
Jake has dogs, someone reaches and bites.
If I walk to a dog 7 times, and I reach my
I know.
hand 7 times, he's gonna bite 7
I know,
times.
but we run into the same scenario when Jen's not around, we get somebody else with a dog, and he does bite.
Okay,
Game on.
so.
Gentlemen,
That's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about.
hold on. We've got to keep the conversation between the board.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want
okay.
you bickering back
So
and
rather
forth.
than, okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we have, so, like, for example, I don't let anybody take my dog for a walk, because I know that I can't control it. So let's say that there is X amount of people only that are qualified to handle this dog, right? The people that I'm training with are gonna be educated, right? So like, I've never trained with this gentleman right here. I've just met him tonight for the first time. So I can't simply say, oh, you should have, your dog's trained, you got it. No, he's never trained with the dog.
Okay.
So that's what it really comes down to. So if we put an exemption of, let's just say that the dog can be in this situation with these people only, that would make more sense. But to sit there and say, we have to keep this dog on leash constantly, okay, well then how are we ever gonna fix the problem of when he is off? He's on a farm, okay? He's on a farm, the dog has to roam. But what about those?
Okay,
ones-
that's good. Let me just stop you right there. We've covered, I think we've got everything. I think we've kind of got a general, a very good and educated background of everything that's happened and what our options are here.
Like I said, I didn't say the leash had to be permanent. Leash had to be done on a leash until he's done his training, and I go over the evaluation. After that, we can go from there.
Yeah, please don't interrupt. If he's making
No.
a statement, we
Yeah,
can't
like I
interrupt.
said, you know, this was a tough one, because the first dog bite was in the house. It's not like she entered the house, she was in the house. See, I wasn't there, so I couldn't tell you. Just like the truck, one person says one thing, somebody's saying different, I wasn't there, so I couldn't tell you anything. But what I worry about is, the scenario is, somebody else got the dog, and we don't put a label on it, and somehow a dog bites, stick in a hand, or whatever.
Yeah.
The liability still will be on you
I'm of
guys.
the opinion that, once the training is complete,
Yeah.
that would be a good time to release the idea or the demand that the dog is on a leash.
Yeah.
At that point in time, again, just my opinion as a layman, at that point in time, perhaps the training needs to continue so that the dog can then learn the correct behavior off leash. The dog is gonna have to learn two things.
You gotta allow me to do my job. If you're not allowing me to do my job.
I know, but you gotta remember one other thing. Let me stop you there. You gotta allow us to do our job.
Was that?
Two different things. You've got to allow us to do our job.
I understand that,
So,
but what I'm saying is.
Again, we've got to deliberate over all the information.
No, I
I know,
understand that. I completely understand that. But in order to do my job, to satisfy what you're asking us to do, I need to be allowed to put the dog in X situation. If I don't face X situation, I can't get you satisfied with what you want. So what you're asking me to do, I need to be able to do my job in order to do it. That's my point.
we'll take that under consideration. Let me just see what my colleague is thinking. What are your thoughts about this, the leash situation, the nuisance situation? How do you see, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm looking at the letter of the law here. The dog's got to be labeled as a nuisance dog because it bit somebody, even if it was provoked. It bit, right? So this is pretty self-evident to me that it's got to be labeled as a nuisance dog. I don't think it needs.
Guys.
Hey, guys, sit down.
I called them over.
I know.
Well,
I was trying to
sit
get
down.
back to,
The boys trying to talk.
we're at the same spot, but we're just
We're fine.
not going the right way. That's all.
Sorry. So based on what's in here, the way the dog's behaving, it's a nuisance dog. So it doesn't sound like, whatever comes after this, I think clearly the dog is already in training for the specific problem. So to me, that's the mitigating factor. I understand, the animal control officer's perspective that the dog should be on a leash, but I don't agree with it. I mean, I don't think a leash certainly wouldn't have solved either of these incidents. To me, both of the incidents were provoked by a person. And that's why the dog needs to be labeled as a nuisance dog. There's no negotiation there. In terms of the leash, I mean, I don't even know what that means. Like, the dog doesn't leave the property. It's not like, so the dog can't leave the house without a leash on and go walk in its backyard? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I think that's something we might want some clarification.
So let's
'cause
ask that question.
Yeah, it's my interpretation that any dog in public would always be on a
And
leash
certainly,
anyways.
certainly the trainer's point, right? Like, if they need to train the dog needs to be off a leash to be trained not to exhibit a behavior when it's not on a leash. Like, you can't train a dog to not bite someone in the face when they stick their face in its face with a leash on. You can't train it to do that without a leash, without taking the leash off. So it doesn't make any sense.
You're missing the whole point. The leash is only till the training's over. I said that. You're both missing the point. Till the training's over, we can talk, the dog's all set. The leash is all done.
Well, how long does the training take?
He does training.
No, you weren't missing the point. You weren't missing the point. You said, in order to get the dog off leash trained, you have to take the dog off the leash and train it off leash. You can't train a dog off leash on a leash. It doesn't work.
If I may, my theory, my theory personally
Yeah.
is I would side with the animal control officer for only the period of the training.
Yeah.
So we would actually put that timeline. So if the timeline is, training is 2 weeks, then 2 weeks is what that period of time.
How about, what if we did this, and this really is a question for you, Mike. What if we required the dog to be on the leash, except when it's being professionally trained by the folks
Well, I
doing
figured
the
the dog's
training?
going to, part of the training's there. He's there trained. It's when she leaves, takes the dog for a ride,
Right.
goes somewhere, goes out, the dog's got to be on a leash to be controlled.
Yeah.
So we already agreed that the dog should be on a leash in public. Okay, I leash my own
Yeah,
dog
but
in
the thing is,
public. But when
guess
you're
what
on
we're
the
saying?
farm and you're on the property.
Can I hold you off for just a second? You gotta let him finish talking. You keep cutting him off.
No, but
We've gotta just.
Oh, he said-
I want to keep this meeting
So I think
short.
he's
got-
fine. He's
I
fine.
got
gotta
to
just-
tell you what I'm going to tell you.
Just
I
hold
got
on
the,
just a second.
we got the answer we wanted, which was, so I totally support that. The dog, should be on a leash when it's,
until the training is over.
what do you think of like off the property versus on the property? Are you saying
Well,
whether it's on the
right,
property?
right,
Like
he's training
the
it-
dog's got to go to the bathroom, the dog
It's-
runs out in the backyard. Do they need to put on a leash to go in the
Wait, you
backyard?
go back to public safety again. Until
I'm asking that- I'm
I know,
asking.
well, that's what Chief Ballard and I said.
Yeah.
Until the training's over, and then he and I evaluate, talk about the evaluation, and then it's good. While he's there training, of course I don't want him on the leash. While he's training, he's there to train the dog.
Yeah.
He's gotta be able to use it without a leash, but he's in control. It falls on his liability at that point, as a trainer. He's insured, it falls. But other than that, once when I talk, say in 2 weeks,
So,
it's over, things are good. She still has to follow the regular town bylaws. If she's walking down the street, it's gotta be on a leash.
On a leash.
Yeah, it's still regular town bylaws take place, but until he's done his training, we just don't want it running the farm loose.
so the dog is currently on an electric collar, which is a wireless leash. It's in training for the off-leash process, okay? So to sit there and say that on someone's property, they can't release their dogs off leash, that's, how do you even say that? You can't tell me what I'm gonna do with my dog on my property, okay?
Okay, hold up just a minute. We've gotta, go ahead, Brett, you have a question for him, Maureen?
Yeah, so that was new. So is Maverick currently on an electric fence?
No, he's on an electric collar.
An electric collar, so is that like proximity, like how does that work?
It's 300 feet. It works at 300 feet. He gets a buzz, a beep, and then if he doesn't listen, then you shock him.
But like what triggers that? Is it
Hand
like-
control.
Hand control.
Hand
Just
control,
the
that's
hand
what it's
control.
about.
And they just said to me they have electric fence doing a consultation about to get an
Right.
electric fence put in.
I
They have
am
a deal.
consulting about an
So it's
electric fence.
containment.
Yeah, I don't,
It's a wireless containment.
But basically, just to circle the wagons here for just a second,
Yeah.
so I think what we're thinking is, the dog is fine to be off leash for training. However, again, to ensure public safety, and in the short run, the dog is to be on leash, I should say.
Until he's finished his training, and then him and I will discuss it, and I report back to you.
and that's
And
what
then-
that's what you want.
Yeah, and then when we're done, training, everything's good with me and him,
And we could do.
away he goes.
We could do
Run
that.
around his property all he wants.
So.
And we should be able to do that, hold up just a second, and we should be able to do that. I don't think we need him to come back in before us, we could probably do
Right.
that via an email.
Yeah, I can report that to Derek.
Or through the town.
Yeah, once it, like I said, once training's on, him and I talk about evaluation,
I guess,
it's their property. I mean, the circumstance, we're not that dog's circumstance, so we're just trying to get him controlled before we let him off, so he doesn't run out and bite anybody, because if he runs out and bites something, all we've done is, we've done nothing.
so I guess one of my final questions is that, let's say I write that certificate in 2 weeks, okay? She gets the diploma. What you're saying is animal control, that doesn't have the experience I do, has to basically sign off on my training to approve whether it's acceptable or not acceptable?
The state requires me to do it.
It's,
Yeah.
you don't get to ask questions.
Well,
So we
curious.
appreciate your input. It's been extremely helpful. We couldn't have done this without your help. We're all set. Thank you.
Okay.
So I make a motion to declare Maverick a nuisance dog, and then we have to do a second motion about the leash.
Okay. I think you need to do that verbatim, is the way that's set up.
Do you want to make a motion first to close the,
The hearing,
The
sure.
hearing.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
I make a motion that we close this hearing.
okay. I'll second the motion. And now the motion,
Yeah. I mean, do I just need to read the nuisance, what a nuisance dog is? Is that the idea?
there's a very specific,
Nuisance dog here, I see, okay. Yeah, I move based on the following facts adduced at this public hearing, including but not limited to the fact that the dog has bitten people on 2 different occasions, that the Board of Selectmen find the dog complained of is a nuisance dog by reason of the fact that the dog,
be the last one.
the last one, has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal, or a person, but that such threat or attack was not a grossly disproportionate reaction under the circumstances.
Would second the motion, make that majority action.
And I make a motion that Maverick be kept on a leash, except when being professionally trained and handled, until such time as the animal control officer deems that training to be complete and sufficient.
Okay. And again, I would second the motion, make that majority action. All right,
Thank you, everyone.
very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was tough, a lot of information. You know, you're kind of waiting for something new, and it was, you know, and then you're arguing with the statute.
Exactly.
There you go. Okay. Welcome back.
Thanks.
We missed you.
All right. All right, that completes the dog hearing, so we're on to agenda item 4.1. We have 2 resignations that have been turned in. One by Steve Rockerton for Cable Advisory Committee, and one for Jay Ferris for the Cemetery Commission. Any discussion?
No.
No.
All right.
I make
Thank,
a-
I guess I'll
I'm
just take one moment to thank both gentlemen for the time served on those various committees. I know Steve is on 2 other committees, so I think that's why he had to give up this particular position. Okay, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the resignation of Steve Rakuten from the Cable Advisory Committee and of Jay Ferris from the Cemetery Commission.
Second.
Make that unanimous action? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the memo that I sent, part of that motion is you need to declare a vacancy on the cemetery commission, so I can put that position on the ballot.
I make a motion to declare a vacancy on the Cemetery Commission.
Thanks.
Second.
Make that unanimous action? And there's sufficient time to get that on the ballot?
Yeah, as long as there's at least 2 weeks, which is why I have them, had you put it on here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So anyone interested in getting involved in town government, there would be a seat that's now open. Someone could run for that. All right.
We're dying to have the help.
All right. All right. Agenda item 4.2, discussion of non-electioneering policy during early and absentee voting policy. There is a state law that actually addresses this, but I had a conversation earlier this afternoon, I should say, with the town clerk and the town manager. This is a little bit of an issue for me. I would like to work through some of the technicalities on this, try to figure out exactly, and the reason being is my family and myself, we own a building that's right next door, right in close proximity to the state law of 150 feet. So just trying to figure out, and I've used that building in the past to post campaign signs and things of that nature, and of course I'm rerunning for Selectmen, so I want to be able to use that property to promote my candidacy.
So do you need to recuse yourself from this, or?
I don't think so. I would see no reason to do that.
I do.
Well, in any event, I'd like to table it. No, I wouldn't, I don't think I need to recuse myself.
I beg to differ, Mr. Chairman,
All
with all
right.
due respect. Maybe we
well-
can discuss that.
Sure, why do you think that would be?
Because you have a personal interest in the decision that's made in this motion. You're running for selectman and you have a building next to the town hall, which
Right,
is
but-
within the zone that we'd be restricting if we made this decision.
Right, but why would,
Because you're
Why?
doing self-harm by voting for this.
right, but that's the thing. If this is enacted, it harms me and nobody else.
Well, there's other people that live in the area, or that maybe I want to stand out front and
But there's
hold a
nobody
sign for
else,
you.
that's true, but there's nobody else that would be willing, or nobody else that has a piece of property that would be within that.
It's not about
distance.
property, it's about someone standing there with a sign. Right? Like, nobody could stand in front of your building with a sign either. Nobody could stand across the street with a sign. It's
Well, they-
anybody doing, I mean, I don't know, correct me
Well,
if I'm
they
wrong.
can stand across the street with the sign.
Well,
so
not if
long-
we enact this.
So long as they're beyond that 150 feet boundary, that's the difference.
This is the same thing that we do at Nipmuc. Right? It's the same rule, it's just that the place people are voting isn't Nipmuc, it's here. So,
Right.
anyway, I'm,
Here's the problem. There's other problems. The distance from the front door only covers half the building. So, what would that interpretation look like? I think we need to have those answers, before we enact this. And I guess the other thing, at the very least, I would like to make sure that the building is not, well, let's just say, let me put it to you this way. Let's say
you
that
can
we
still
rent
put
it.
signs up there when the election day is at Nipmuc.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
Right, so that's
We all
not
believe
what's
in
at question.
promoting economics in town, right? The economy and commercial enterprise in town, correct? What if a presidential candidate wanted to rent that property and run it as a campaign office? They couldn't.
No, you don't
They
vote
couldn't
here.
put a sign.
You don't vote out of this building, you vote out at the school.
This is just during the absentee ballot. We should either have this hearing or we should delay it, so.
Well, that's what I mean. I think we should delay it till we
Okay,
get
so let's delay it.
we get a better
So we'll
understanding.
just table
Voting
it.
starts Monday.
Early voting starts Monday.
Yeah.
The reason
Oh,
this
so we
policy
need
is
to
brought
decide
forward
now.
is because early voting is on Monday.
Okay.
Can I speak to this for a second?
Sure.
So I just wanted to be clear to the board. I am recommending this policy to be adopted by the Board of Selectmen because a clear example is in 2018, we had a woman in a lawn chair sitting right out in the grass area with a sign. Don't remember what the sign said, but she was there for a couple hours, and we got a couple phone calls on it, and I didn't think it was appropriate. So so it's never really been an issue with absentee voting, but now over the last couple of years, because we have early voting here at the town hall, I felt it was, among discussions that I've had with other town clerks, as well as state officials, the Mass General Law that's cited in that policy only applies to polling locations. It doesn't apply to, an early voting site is not considered a polling location. So they said you couldn't prohibit anybody from 150 feet. However, the Board of Selectmen, having the control of the town hall, can establish a policy. And I felt, representing the voters of the town of Upton, that if they are coming here, because we had like close to 900 people vote here, early voting in 2018, which was like 25%, if they're going to come here, they should have the same rights that the people go when they vote at Nipmuc, and not have electioneering surrounding them, 150 feet away. That is, early voting is starting on Monday. It got brought up again. I originally sent the policy to Derek on December 30th, and it's before you today. And I think, in fairness to the voters, I think they should, that decide to early vote, they should have the same fairness as the people going to Nipmuc.
I mean, there's a Mass General Law already out on this, but it doesn't pertain to early voting. Now, early voting it's a whole week, or 2 weeks now, 3 weeks?
It's a week for the primary, it's 2 weeks for the general election in November.
It's 2 weeks for the general primary. What about our local elections in May?
There is no early voting with the local election, but in this policy is absentee voting,
Because absentee voting, a lot of people think I do mail out the ballots, and that is the case, probably 75%. But there is people that come into the town hall because they know they're going to be away, and instead of me mailing the ballot, they vote at the counter in my office. So that's why I included both absentee and early voting, and the absentee would apply for the local elections.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the big thing is if somebody wanted to run a state or local election and wanted to use that office as a campaign office, this would then prohibit us the ability to rent that space for that purpose. So again, if
So I
you
have
would like...
two questions, if I may?
Sure.
Okay, no, go ahead.
The only other thing I was going to make mention of is if you could do this so long as we just reduce that 150 to 120, and that would make sure that it didn't cut the building in half. So that would be fine with me if we just cut it to 120. That way, no matter which corner we measure from, we're not going to exclude the building.
So I have two questions. One is, are you comfortable having Steve be part of this conversation and this motion and vote?
No, because I'm not really sure.
I'm not either.
I've never come across this.
And we've never talked about this. This has never come up. I've never heard of anything like this. So this is the first time.
Just goes to show you, we don't talk outside of meetings.
Yeah, exactly. I literally looked at the agenda and I was like, oh, this is some administrative thing. We'll just check that off.
That's what I did. I put it right past it. I said, what the hell? Let's check it. Read it.
Right.
Well, I read it and I said, wait a minute. That doesn't
Yeah, so I mean,
I'm not sure. I'm really not.
no, I know. Because, right, there's part of me that's like, I want him to be able to put up a vote for Brett Simon's sign on his building next year when I'm running for selectman.
That's right. You want that option, right?
So, right? I
So
mean,
it's a 25-foot difference, what's the big deal?
I mean, perhaps we should table it and we'll work through the
well, no,
bugs.
I'm not comfortable tabling it.
Okay.
Because the whole reason we're having the conversation is for the,
Okay.
the voting, it starts on Monday, so that doesn't make any
Okay.
sense to table it, right?
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you enact these things to target any particular homeowner, which is, I mean, that's not the intent. The intent is that the spirit of this.
Is to mirror the Mass General Law.
Right.
The spirit of it ultimately,
I really think you should leave.
that's fine. Let me make one comment and then I'll leave. The spirit, I believe, of the law is to make sure that if you have a town hall with a large front yard, that nobody is on that particular parcel of land promoting themselves. Where there's other pieces of land involved, I would think that it would be a different set of circumstances. That would be my last. Question? comment?
Mr. Chairman, a quick question, Rick McGuire. Has our legal department ruled on this?
We're not ready to take,
Have we had any discussion on legal?
you put it in a very uncomfortable situation.
All right. I will recuse myself.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about this, so that's fine. So
It just came up this afternoon.
for me, it's not a conversation about landowners, right? That has nothing to do with this conversation, which is why I didn't think a particular landowner, whether it was people next door or up the street or left of the street, I don't care where they are. And so, short of Steve having been here, I would have never thought twice about this. It would have been like, yep, check the box, nobody within 150 feet. It would have been a non-discussion, non-issue, check the box. So if we did what we should have done, which was had no discussion until Steve recused himself, then we wouldn't be discussing it, because I wouldn't have even thought of Steve's building.
I
Would have never occurred to me. So I agree that the spirit of the letter of this law is that it should be consistent with Mass law. We would have no reason to make an exception to that other than a personal interest of a board member.
Yeah, I think so.
Now that that's out there, frankly, if he had said nothing, we might have said, oh, 100 feet. I mean, I don't know. But now the fact that we're in this position is uncomfortable to do anything other than match what the 150 feet was, because for me, this is about protecting people, right, from being essentially harassed when they go to vote.
Correct.
So we have to enact something to protect people from having someone standing on the front steps of the town hall handing out flyers to get them to vote. We have to be respectful of the voters.
That's correct.
So, and I don't have, I mean, again, if Steve wasn't here, we wouldn't even be having this discussion about whether we make it 120 feet or 100 feet or 90 feet or 160 feet or, I mean, so I don't know.
And I tend to agree with you, because I really feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable. I'm pretty uncomfortable right now.
That's why we pay you the big buck.
Right?
I knew you were going to say that.
So,
120 feet from the town hall, doesn't mean that one.
Well, again, the state law states 150. I'm trying to be fair to all the voters, whether they're going to the polling location at Nipmuc or they decide to come here for early voting. 150 feet is 150 feet. State law, it's been in effect for at least 19 years that I've been town clerk.
I mean, yes.
For those of us that have been around here a while, Mr. Roach, you may recall that there was, when they voted here, go over to the common, and about 10 feet from the first walkway, there was always a line, there was always a line painted on that granite curbing over there. That was the mark. You can't encroach past that line. That's something that's been done in this, I don't know where the mark is up there, but I know there was one. That's been the rule that was followed in this town for as far as I can remember.
And at Nipmuc, it's the sign that you, like you
Right.
pointed out. When the polling location got changed to Nipmuc back in 2004, I believe it was, I went out there with a measure and we measured diagonally, like we didn't make it straight, we measured diagonally, and it was right at that entrance, and it made it easy.
Do you measure from the entrance or that
The
entrance?
the door of the polling location.
So this, it would be the front door.
Yeah.
And if we measure 150 feet, it splits the building in half.
Absolutely.
It's in the garage door.
So,
That's the garage door.
so how does that work? Can he put a sign on the right half of his building? As long as it's outside the 150 feet,
Outside
right?
the 150.
Well, there is the question, and again, if it's on the other side where it can't really be seen if you're walking in, that's my goal with this policy.
I mean, but if you can see it, it doesn't matter if you can see it or not, as long as it's outside the 150 feet.
Right. I think
He can put a sign on half his building that says, "Vote for Steve Metellian." As long as it's outside the 150 feet, we can't stop him from doing that.
Correct.
No different
And
than
that, from that front door here,
someone
more than
standing there, sorry.
150 feet to his building, I'll tell you right now.
What's
No,
that?
not- we
We
measured it
measured
today.
it, we measured it today.
Yeah.
Where does it go?
The 150-foot mark lands dead center on the garage door. So split basically. splits the
Would he
road.
have room to park his pickup truck on the right side to put his signs on it? Because he usually puts them on the pickup truck.
Yeah, his pickup
Full
truck.
parking on the
Fine, just make it 150 feet, tell him he can put his signs up on the side. I mean, we don't have to tell him anything.
He would basically lose, like, if you look at the building, he has
One
more,
second,
he has more area space on the garage side.
Yeah.
As far as like to affix a sign.
Yeah.
Than he would on the office side of the building, so.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure, but certainly if he was gonna park a vehicle, he could park it on that side over by the office.
Or he could still put up a big sign in front of the other side if he wants, it's
Right.
just
And
not
the same would hold true for this side of the building as well, 150 feet that way.
up that way.
So that also prevents anyone from our neighbor next door putting up any campaign signs. But
Right.
I have received complaints over the years of people putting signs next door, and they're standing at my counter, and they're looking out the window, and the sign is right there.
Go ahead, sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
So, I don't really understand why this is even a debate. 150 feet, as outlined in the Mass General Law, is about not infringing upon people's rights and potentially harassing or impeding somebody going to the polls. It's sort of ludicrous that we're trying to say it has to be 150 feet because that's the way it's always been. At the high school, there are no private properties that would allow somebody to use their own property of which they're in control and infringe upon that 150-foot boundary space. To go to 120 feet, both for the neighbors to the right, for the neighbors to the left, whoever that may be, for somebody on the town common, I think just makes sense. Otherwise, you're penalizing two people, at least two people, whoever lives next door and whoever owns the property on the other side. You're infringing upon their rights to be able to speak or to rent their properties, as somebody previously pointed out, if they wanted to rent it in a presidential election. I think in this era of trying to work towards a more cohesive economic development and productive use of our town resources, that it's kind of ludicrous that we're saying it has to be 150 feet at this town hall without consideration for people downtown. If anything, I would call that prejudicial, and I would ask you to go through and recuse yourselves.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but thank you for your input.
I would just comment that I don't know how many other towns, selectmen have adopted this policy, but I can probably bet you that a good percentage has, because we were actually advised by the Elections Division at the state to have your Board of Selectmen adopt this type of policy because of the early voting. And again, early voting's only been around, this will be the third time we're doing it.
Right.
It's not like, it's still a learning curve.
You get more and more every year, too.
Exactly.
I'd go with 150.
If I could
Yep.
just throw one alternative idea out there. So this includes early voting and absentee voting. And just keep in mind, early voting only affects the national races. And this wouldn't, and if we just focus on early voting, this wouldn't affect our May election. So, but if we kept in absentee voting, it would have an impact on our local election. So if we extracted absentee voting from this policy, then it would have no effect on any of our butters as far as the local election.
So that'd be to change the wording to make it just for early voting, but not for absentee voting.
Right.
And how long is the absentee voting?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Now,
On average.
Kelly has educated me that folks do come into the building for absentee voting.
Yeah.
It's not a lot, but we do get folks that come in.
Because they're going to be leaving or whatever.
Exactly.
Good with that.
So just for
Early
early
voting.
voting, but not for absentee voting? Because the absentee voting is what's been happening forever. The early voting is the thing that's new, right?
And this is now a polling location for early
For
voting.
early voting.
And that's why Kelly brought this forward, because it's a
Yeah.
polling location, just like Nipmuc High School is a polling location. So when folks come in here,
Yeah.
Monday through Friday next week.
Right, it's like a
try
regular
to
voting
prevent
process.
Folks from standing at the front door,
Yeah.
handing out brochures. That's
Yeah.
the whole goal of this.
You have to set the booths up and everything, right?
Has there ever been any question or issue with the absentee voting in the past?
Yes, because people have put signs right around town hall, and people are like, how can they do that? Where I'm voting here. So it has been questioned in the past. I'm just trying to be, as town clerk, I represent the 5,000 elected, registered voters out there. I'm just trying to make it fair when everyone takes the opportunity to vote.
120 feet puts them well beyond the doors and not in front of people's faces, even in progress into the building.
If you're gonna do it, it should mirror the Mass General law, I think.
I agree. I think we should either,
I
I mean, I think the 150 feet isn't the debate. I think the only thing that I would even think about considering would be the absentee versus the early voting. But, I mean, again, I don't think,
will recant on my thought on that, and I would go with the version that's been set forth here.
and just be consistent.
Yep,
So whenever people are voting in the town hall.
they're gonna be able to vote and vote in peace.
Yeah, without, right, rather than customizing, because then if you make it 120 feet, somebody else says, oh,
They'll change it
I
to
just built a
100
house
feet
and I'm
or-
100 feet, or, hey, I want to put a sign here, so can you make it 80 feet? Good.
Worry about that. We'll put it on this over at the,
Yeah.
across the street, we'll let them do it, that's town property.
So I will move to accept the policy as written, put forward by the town clerk regarding early voting and absentee voting.
Second?
Thank you.
Right, and then, right,
Sun could, sun, property's long. It's not there. Voting day.
Or absentee votes, we're not
Yeah.
doing
They could put it there, as long as it was there, when this voting taking place in the private truck over there, as long as you want. As long as it's not during voting time.
I'll decide it after.
both of us, right, like she made a motion and I didn't support it. Right. So we both have to support it. All right. Tough act to follow, Lynn.
All right.
Okay,
We all ready?
all
Yeah.
set.
Agenda item 4.3, discussion on funding request from Disability Commission. We received a letter from Ms. Lynn Haggerty. Hi there.
Hi,
Good
Lynn.
evening.
Sergeant Lane,
All right.
I put in the request for, to consider the trust funds. I was in a Disabilities Commission meeting. The chair asked for somebody to volunteer to write a letter, so I wrote a letter.
Okay.
The chair asked for a volunteer to write a letter. I was attending the meeting, I volunteered to write a letter. And because earlier in the meeting, it was talked about if funding for the draft warrant article, is that how I say it? Yes.
Mhm.
If, for the transition plan, it could be funded instead of raise and appropriate in other ways. Someone brought up maybe Community Preservation Act funding. I had brought up trust funds. I know in the past, the Recreation Master Plan, certain allocation was from CPC funds, another allocation was from the trust funds to make up the amount of money to accomplish this. So
Okay. And this is,
I don't know what trust fund. I did look them up, but
okay.
just in consideration of that,
Yeah.
please.
And this is something that we have been trying to accomplish for quite a number of years. I think there was an application for a grant. This is actually, it's described as the Town of Upton Self-Evaluation Transition Plan, which is the same as our ADA transition plan, correct?
A self-evaluation transition plan is the ADA plan, and it
Okay.
also encompasses the AAB, Massachusetts regulations.
Okay. And in the letter, I'll just read off a quick paragraph. I'm writing to you to ask to consider utilizing one of the trust funds of the town to fund this project. The estimated cost to fund this is $30,000. Now, we do have, there's, I guess, two parts, is do we want to use the funds to address this problem and try to get this plan completed? And then the next question is, which fund would we use? We do have, it looks like two. I would say most likely it would be the W. Knowlton, controlled by the selectmen for any purpose.
Yeah, I don't think we could use the other one, right? We can't use the
Yeah,
welfare.
I wouldn't say welfare. So that one has a current balance of $64,022.94. So I guess, Ms. Haggard, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted you to consider this, and I am, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, the disabilities chair is here. I believe she was going to apply to see if portion could be CPC, so that's all I wanted to add to this.
All right, before we cross that, Derek, can we use any of CPC funds for a study like this?
Well, so CPC can be used for open space and recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. We talked about this, and Christine Scott sits on the Disability Commission. She also sits on CPC. Her, at first thought, she didn't think this would be a use of CPC funds, but she said she would certainly set this on the agenda for a future meeting to have that conversation with CPC. So I would say I'm not exactly certain, but if my personal opinion, I would say no.
Are there grants? Aren't there grants available?
The Mass Office on Disability, they issue requests for grant proposals usually by midsummer, and then they make the awards soon after, so late fall, early winter. We did apply last year. The Disability Commission actually did apply with CMRPC for $30,000 to fund a transition plan. At the same time, the Recreation Commission also applied for a grant and received the grant award to redo the walkway at Kiwanis. As you all know, we had an administrative order that we had to comply by June 1st of this year, and so we received that grant to remedy those problems. We were unsuccessful on the $30,000 transition grant application.
All right.
Can I just inject one last thing, please? Excuse me.
Yes, go right ahead.
So on the, under the Community Preservation Act, under the Coalition Act, under the database, when you research ADA, it comes up with, like our town, you would look up Upton, obviously. If you research under ADA, under open space, which is a portion of what will be evaluated, up to $100,000, I think it was Acushnet. There's other towns that is cited on the site that you can find, that it shows that the money's been utilized for that. So if there's any information that you find helpful,
Okay.
so I'll pass that along.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time considering it.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Very good. So I guess, again, two parts. What are your thoughts on funding this? at this point? And if so, I mean, personally, I would like to get the problem solved. It seems like this has been in queue for 5 years, and we just can't seem to get it solved, so sooner is better than later.
What's the grant process?
The grant process would be for again, last time there was a disability commission that took the lead. They were working with CMRPC. CMRPC has applied on many occasions and received this type of grant award, so they're experienced in this. And so the process, if we were to follow suit last year, we would reapply, except this would be our only application. We wouldn't be competing with ourselves in hopes that they would fund it. Now, we had a representative from Mass Office of Disability who attended the last meeting, and he did say at that meeting that the vast majority, if not all, of the awardees for the transition plans were communities that did not have a transition plan at all. And I believe we certainly have one for the recreation facility over at Kiwanis Beach. I think we have an older version going back to early 2000s. So maybe
That's
puts
just for RecCom.
The RecCom one is 2017 era. And I think the town-wide transition plan goes back to 2005 time period, so 2002? 2002. So maybe that puts us at a competitive disadvantage if we were to reapply.
Yeah.
Jeff from Mass Office of Disability said that every year, the review committee, they prioritize how they want to distribute those funds. And last year, that was their priority to communities that didn't already have a transition plan.
Yeah. Do we know how much we've accomplished since that 2002 plan? And
Nothing is on the plan.
The reason I ask is because, right, if it's going to be the same and nothing's changed, then we don't need to spend $30,000 to get a report back that says the same thing that it said in 2002. I don't know if it would come back different, or that's just my initial. Like, does it help us? Does it help us get grant money? Is there a reason to have an updated version of that?
Yeah, certainly it would help us to have an updated version. Going back to 2002, not having looked at it recently, my guess that's mostly focused on facilities accessibility.
Yeah.
Transition plans focus on facilities and services.
Yeah.
So an updated transition plan would allow us to think about what other services we should be providing as well as a municipality.
Got it.
And it always seems like we're in better play for more grants going down the road if we have a plan like this that's, obviously a 2020 plan as opposed to working off something that's
for sure.
2002 or 12 or however old it is. So,
Yeah.
again, to me, it's been in queue for quite some time. I'd like to solve the problem, in my opinion. I don't know what our options are.
We're gonna look into the funding sources as far as CPC.
Well, we've been unsuccessful with the grant, and as Derek said, if we're at a competitive disadvantage.
Oh, I agree. I think she's asking about the CPC money.
CPC.
Not CMRPC,
To come up to the 30,000.
Yeah, I'm not sure what those fund balances are in CPC. I mean, do you think?
I think they have plenty of money. I think the question is, can they use it for this?
Right.
But it sounds like, did you say that other communities have done that? So we were able to research other towns? Do you know?
Worded another.
We could, we can do some research.
How it's used in other communities, it's worded under open space, the different towns, it's just labeled for ADA compliance.
Yeah.
Okay, so the wording on that. The other thing that the Mass Office of Disabilities mentioned, Jeff Duggan, that was in the meeting the other day, that if we do this, this might put us in better standing for the $250,000 execution or planning grant. So we're making a good faith effort, and really, we're 28 years behind the 8 ball. Sorry, but gotta lay it out there. That's the facts of the facts.
And I think the other,
And it might not be $30,000.
I think the other issue is if we do try to request CPC funds to do that, we cannot just expend those funds, right? If we do it through CPC funds, we'd have to go through annual town meeting, correct?
Oh, yeah. That's-
Yeah,
They'd have to hold a public hearing, they'd have to get it on the warrant.
right,
Yep.
right. So,
So that wouldn't even happen, the earliest would be November.
Well, the warrant's closed, as you all know.
Right.
So in order to get it back on the warrant, we have to reopen the warrant for a period of time, then reclose the warrant, go through the process all over again.
And that's assuming the CPC would
Right,
agree to do it.
right. And CPC's, I think they're meeting the first or second week of March.
And it seems like there's other benefits too, with the downtown redevelopment happening, right, with trying to get MassWorks money. I would think it might help with some of that stuff if we laid that out, or not really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always good to have a transition plan on
Yeah.
file. Yeah.
the other thing I'm thinking is if we're trying to move forward with the municipal building project,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, that now, what other grant opportunities might be available
Yeah.
within
Just
that
to have
bill?
it.
You know, so if we kick this down the road 6 months, or 8 months, or 10 months,
Yeah.
you know, those might be conflicting, so, you know, like I say, I think it'd be best to try to solve the problem if we can. So I guess our options are, we could do it with the Knowlton money, we could reopen the warrant, you know, but we'd have to wait for a CPC meeting, see if they supported expending the dollars for that use. If they did expend, you know, agree to doing that, we'd have to open the warrant and craft a warrant article.
What do you think, Maureen?
Probably out of the, what do you got, 7-15?
Yeah, it would be the one with the 64,000 in it.
Yeah, sure. Knowlton.
Yeah.
I mean, just,
Yeah.
yeah. The only thing I would offer is that, I mean, I agree, it needs to be done. There's no question it's gotta be done. So I think the only discussion here is what's the best way to fund it, and, you know, what's the sense of urgency? If we do it now or do it in November, is that some critical difference? So that's my only hesitation, is how we fund this. It absolutely needs to be done, and it's very important to do for a lot of reasons.
Go ahead.
No, I don't want to interrupt you, I just have a comment whenever you finish.
Okay, so, Brett, yeah, if you can finish, we'll get Derek's input, and then
Yeah.
I think we have 2 other comments from the crowd, and then
Yeah,
we'll
so it
we'll
absolutely.
button this up.
It absolutely needs to be done, there's no question about it. So my only thought is around the funding, right? So how we do it, because I look at this $64,000, and that's literally, it's the, for lack of a better word, the only discretionary money that the board has. We have that $30,000 that we can use for, you know, assessments, appraisals, all that stuff. And so that comes back every year as long as the townspeople approve it. And then this fund is the other opportunity we have to fund sort of emergencies or things we need, or unexpected things, or items at our discretion. So once this is gone, it's gone, right? Unlike that other $30,000. So the question is, do we want to, you know, again, once this money doesn't come back every year.
It actually, if you look at the non-expendable portion of it,
Yeah,
it's a staggering number.
but we
So
don't,
it
how much does it earn, but how much does it earn every year?
Yeah, even if it earns probably 5%, it's probably still making something like 30,000 a year.
No.
There's no way.
No way.
No way.
Did you see what's in it?
Yeah, I've seen what's in it, there's no way.
It doesn't make, there's no.
It ended, it had a FY18 ending balance of 70,000, and now it has a FY19 ending balance of 64,000.
Did we expend money out of it last year? Why would it go
Last
down?
year, I don't think we did any last year. I can't recall one last year.
So it doesn't replenish that fast, let me just put it.
There's no secret, it's 773,000 is what's in the fund, so depending, yeah, it's,
But we can't spend, like, it's important to know, we can't spend a dime of the $773,000.
Right.
We can only spend the interest earned off of those investments. So I have no idea whether this makes $1,000 a year, or it doesn't make $30,000 a year, but whatever it is, it doesn't replenish itself. So once this money's gone, it's gone. That's the way I look at it. Sorry, I'm just trying to do some quick math, but, so anyway, so that's my only hesitation. That's all. And I'm not saying necessarily we should or shouldn't do it. I'm just mindful of the fact that once this $64,000 is gone, it certainly doesn't come back in $30,000 chunks. That's all.
Well, at 4% a year, it would be roughly, say, $28,000, but again, that's just my rough math, but anyways. Derek, if you want to...
I just wanted to just bring to light the timing of this. So, as you know, we have a building committee that's trying to identify an OPM and to, again, propose a community center that will house the library and the senior center. So I'm just kind of wondering the timing of this, because I would be interested in know why would we spend money on the library and the senior center for a transition building when those two problems, in theory, should go away. Now, if town meeting, say in November, doesn't vote for those, obviously, then those are two buildings we're going to have to remedy somehow, whether accessibility issues and renovations. I would just be cautious to not put all of our money into those two buildings if we don't know if we're ever going to occupy those buildings within the next 2 years.
Okay. Good point. I think we had a hand in the back. Michelle?
Thank you. Michelle Inchimarelli, 148 South Street. First of all, I'm hearing very strongly that there's likely to be a school override for about $2.5 million on the spring. So I think that really sends us into some dark days as we think about finances going forward. We have put off this transition plan. We have put off renovating and bringing our buildings up to code. We are in violation. It is ludicrous at this point that we are doing rehabilitation on a field for recreational purposes, when a field can only be used at most, 7 or 8 months out of the year, and we have a library that has never been able to be used year-round by people that would want access to it. So the transition plan does not require us to spend one more dollar on rehabbing any of these buildings. It simply identifies the issues that are at hand, it identifies solutions, and it puts them in a priority order. I think anyone here in town who said which should be fixed first, get a ramp so that people can get into the library, or fix up Leland Field, I don't think anybody here is going to say, oh no, the library can wait, we might get a new one in 3 years. So I strongly request and appeal to you to do the right thing here, to put some money and put some time into this transition plan. Again, it doesn't obligate us to actually fix anything. We're obligated by the law to fix everything. But the transition plan gives you a priority order, gives you a timeline, gives you approximate costs. And we may find that some of these fixes are actually pretty inexpensive and will provide access to buildings that somebody in this town has not been able to get in since they were built.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good, thanks. Thank you. Paul?
Mr. Chairman, I must point out that I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Simon's position that you got $64,000 and you're going to take half of it, that it's going to take you a long time to get that amount of money back. Okay? Second of all, might I through you ask town manager, is this not the same proposal that's put forth in Article 17 of this draft warrant that we have out there?
Yes.
Which is going to be handled at town meeting, where there would be basically no question of the source of funding.
Right, I think what the idea was that instead of having to use tax dollars to fund this, if we could get some money through whether a CPC or an alternative source of funding, it would reduce the burden at town meeting. That was the thought process, correct? Right? That was the conversation with the commission?
Was
Okay.
instead of raise and appropriate, if there was another way to fund this.
It would be called free cash.
Yep. I've got to say, it's a difference of opinion, gentlemen. I was just talking to one of the members of the Trust Fund Commission, and you would be very surprised how much interest these accounts earn. This isn't like your local savings account at 1 or 2%. They earn good interest rate because of the amount of dollars that are in them. So yes, you're right, it doesn't replenish every year, but I've got to tell you, I'm in support of putting this problem to rest, funding it, and being done.
I would support that if we knew how much money that account earned every year. If that account earns $30,000 a year, then I'll have no more questions, and we will support this. If that account earns some other number, then I don't know what I would say. But because that's my only concern is that this money just goes away. But if it earns $30,000 a year every year, then I mean, it won't do that when the market's not going well, so let's not get ourselves into thinking that's going to happen. But so I would be interested in knowing that number. Like I said, we absolutely need to do a transition plan. It's on the warrant, so we've got a backstop for that. If it doesn't pass at the warrant, we can do the grant. If it doesn't pass at the grant, there's other ways we can fund this. We can always come back. This money doesn't go away.
Right.
In terms of, we can say, you know what, we're not gonna allocate another dollar out of this until we have this all figured out, right? No, so it's not like this money just disappears for any reason other than our deciding to spend it on something. So I'd wanna, so anyway, so I'm not comfortable spending this until we
Either
have the
find out,
information.
we find out how much this account is making, or we do it at town meeting when we want.
Either of those is fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, other than having the annual report and seeing what it's done year over year, or having a member of the trust fund commission here, we wouldn't know that answer.
Well,
we have to ask
the public should know the answer, so yeah, I agree.
No, no, I
with you.
mean, we'd have to ask a member of the trust fund commission to see what it actually earns.
Yeah, we could probably ask Ken, right, the treasurer,
Ken's on the trust fund commission.
Yes.
right? So he should be able to tell us pretty easily.
All right. So you want to pick this up again at our next meeting?
Yes.
That'd be great.
Okay, and we'll figure it out. If it does earn a, you know, a handsome rate of return, we can fund it.
Can you help us get that from Ken, or how do we get? Because
I will.
we should frankly get it for all these, right? Like, I'd love to see, here are all the trust, sorry, we're going off topic a little bit, right? But here are all the trust funds, and here's what they've each earned over the last 5 years. Like, there isn't any reason we shouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I think
performance
we've,
numbers.
we've expended money out of that before.
We sure have.
Yeah, so it's
we sure
certainly.
have.
Yeah, that's the,
But I
again,
feel like it's
that's,
been in $4,000 or $5,000 tranches. I don't know that we've done it in $30,000 tranches. That's the thing, right? Like, we've been spending 5,000 here, 4,000 there, 1,000 for this. This is like half of what's in there. We've never made it. At least since I've been on the board, we've never spent anywhere near $30,000 out of this trust fund.
Right.
So,
I'd be willing to take it up at the next meeting after
Yeah,
we find out all
is that
the
okay?
information.
So we'll try to, so we'll try then to reach out to the chairman of the trust fund commission, try to see historically what this looks like. He may have a better account of what we've expended out of it, so we can see.
that's another good point, right? What's the historical
Yeah.
spending then?
Right, because we don't know if a few years ago we may have, there may have been multiple 5,000s that left it
Right.
and depleted it.
Right. Or it could be, hey, it earns $30,000 a year, and we always spend $20,000 or $30,000, and it's not a big deal. We always do that. I just don't know.
Right,
I just don't know.
okay. All right, so we'll do that. We're going to take this under advisement. We'll bring this forward at our next meeting. So I think we're scheduled for, is it March 10th?
our next meeting, yes, March 10th.
March 10th. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Agenda item 4.4, review an application for a one-day liquor license from BVT. So each year, the superintendent does superintendent's dinner. I believe it's a fundraiser, and they serve a meal with wine and beverages with the meal. So this has been something that I've been familiar with for the last couple of years. The date is Thursday, March 19th, 2020, and it looks like the superintendent's dinner is scheduled for between 5 and 10:30 p.m. So we have all the supporting documentation, the request, sign off from the school committee members, application is in place, and all insurances are in place. Any questions or comments from the board?
Public safety has signed off.
Public safety has, okay. Very good.
Are there any other signatures or people that need to sign off, or Board of Health? Do they need to do anything with it, or?
That's not with the liquor license.
No, the liquor licenses, okay.
Yeah, I think they would probably already have a vehicular license. I think we issued
They
them
do
one.
have a common vic already.
Yeah.
But this is just the liquor license.
For that day.
So the police and fire chief will both sign off.
And
Okay.
they do it right in the school too, don't they?
Yes.
I think it's in the cafeteria. So does the Vic license cover all areas of the school? Or does the Vic license only cover the Three
restaurant.
Seasons
The
restaurant?
It's the
It's the
serving.
restaurant, isn't it?
Yes.
The licensed premises.
Yeah.
So it covers the whole
Yeah.
premises?
The license.
Anyway, okay. I was just curious. As long as everybody's, the fire chief and police chief are
Okay.
good, I'm fine.
All right. I will take a motion.
I will move that we approve the one-day liquor license with DVT on March, is it 19th?
19th.
Second?
I make that unanimous action? All right. Agenda item 4.5, authorize expenditure in excess of the original appropriation for snow and ice. So we are not in a deficit yet. Mr. Westgate, we are not in a deficit yet at this point in time. I think we have, it looks like current balance of $27,000 in the account and the original appropriation was $240,000.
Roughly. I mean, when I put the memo together, we still had some bills trickling in. Our salt shed's not full, our calcium chloride's not full. We have plow blades on order, so, but that was roughly. And taking into account, we have a six-wheeler down with a blown engine. So that was a very costly repair.
Very good. Any questions, Brett or Maureen? Maureen, do you have anything?
Do you have any idea about how much you're looking for?
The six-wheeler?
No. For the deficit?
Oh, I have no idea. No. It's just, by state law, it's just an authorization to overspend.
Right.
And then I keep it as low as I possibly can.
Okay, yeah.
That's
I
what
do.
I wanted to hear.
Yeah. Save some money
Same
there.
one, huh?
Right. This is, right. This is standard every year. We typically do, that is the one line item in the budget that you can overspend. Snow and ice. Any questions, Brett?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, I will take a motion.
Make a motion to authorize the expenditure in excess of the original appropriation for snow and ice.
I'll second.
Make that unanimous action?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Item 4.6, authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Baldassar Contractors, Inc. of the amount of $846,115. And this is in regard to the Fowler Street Bridge. I believe we had 10 bids. We had a very good report that was attached to this request.
Thank you.
It looks like they are ranging in value from the low bid of $846,115 to the high bid of $1,526,528.14.
You are correct. I was excited when I saw that we had 10 bids, and then my excitement went out the window and I started to read them. $846,115 is the low bid. It's roughly within $2,000 of our budget. So no change orders on this one.
Wow.
But we did get a favorable bid. We did the background on the company. I'm familiar with them. I've worked with them in other towns as well. They did a great job in the town of Plymouth on some rather large projects. So at this point, you would authorize the town manager to enter into a contract. I have already sent a letter of intent to the company, letting them know that they are the successful, low and responsible bidder, that they would hear from the town, provided they bring forward their bonds, sureties, insurance, things that they owe the town, and we'll put a book together. The town manager will sign it. Once that happens, then we'll have our pre-construction meeting with the two chiefs, myself, town manager, and talk about the schedules and how soon they want to mobilize and the closing of the bridge. And I'll be happy to see it done.
Do you have any timetable? Is there any?
It's not a large project. It's a three-sided precast construction, so as long as they get right on it, they'll have that done before fall or by fall.
So you think this is more or less a summer project, it'll be done by fall?
He's going to want to get out of it. Pardon?
It's part of the small bridge program too.
Yes, we have $500,000 coming. We've already received some reimbursement from the state already.
Right, and there's been, right, and just for folks listening at home, again, this was part of the small bridge grant that we received a few years ago, $500,000, and the rest of the monies we have appropriated through annual town meeting. Maureen, do you have any questions?
No, it looks
right.
good.
Brett, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Very good. I will take a motion.
I move that we authorize the town manager to execute the contract with Balthazar Contractors Incorporated.
Second?
And make that unanimous action? Thank you. All right, time for the budget review portion of the agenda. Derek, is there any change in the lineup, or are we going to start with DPW?
Mr. Westgate's is the longest. I mean, I know Janice and Pat's go very quickly. Dennis doesn't mind waiting an extra 15 minutes.
Is that all right, Dennis? All right, very good. Mr. Roach, would you like to go first?
She never leaves.
Oh, you don't mind waiting, do you? All right.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Pretty simple, our budget.
That's what we like.
We did make money for the town, like 19. $102,442 we brought in over and above what our expenses are for that department. I know you can get the CPC money out of it.
Oh, he should be your favorite person in town.
That's it.
Positive budget.
And whatever none of this budget, but we're gonna have to revisit the structure of a payment.
He's doing what he gets paid to do.
For 41 years now.
What do you want?
I always remind you of that. It probably is 42, you forget it after a while.
I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Flaherty.
He's always,
I
hey,
appreciate what you just said.
What's that?
He's getting paid to do what he always does. Good to remind him that often.
well, every town meeting,
What page
the
are we
last
on?
30 years I've had to get up and nobody would approve a raise, but I would get it. And it was called Irish arithmetic.
Can I jump in? Basically, you're looking at, in comparison, the last couple of years, we issued this past year 7% increase in overall permits for the department, and the revenues we took in were 30% above last year. We've kept all expenses to level funding, and the only adjustment that we made to the budget was the 2% COLA and the adjustments for the
And the 2% COLA.
longevity bonus.
Yeah.
But everything else was level.
I have a problem with the longevity bonus that was taken away from our department because we're part-time. I don't think that's right. You know what I'm saying? So I have to, why they did that, I don't know. Is there any reason why they took a longevity bonus from part-time people, employees of the town?
I don't know anything about
You're
that.
referring to your stipend employees?
Yeah. We were
Stipend
taken, it
employees.
was taken away.
Right,
Yeah.
but not wage employees.
Right.
Yeah, the full-time employees get it, the part-time
Anybody
don't.
working over 20 hours per week is benefit eligible, and that's how it's always been?
I was eligible up until last year.
Everyone that works over 20 hours per week.
Well, that's something they put in, but I was eligible for longevity. Everyone was part-time or whatever, you know?
Nice to have this discussion.
Yeah, I know.
That's a conversation we can have, Pat, with the personnel board?
We'll do that, yes.
Okay.
And, you know, we get the, as Diane said, the COLA is 2%. In 2020, the US inflation rate is 2.5%, so we're working in a deficit, okay? We'll discuss that at another time. We have the budget, and if there's any questions from the Board of Selectmen, shoot, you know?
Any questions, Maureen?
No, looks fine.
That's good. Brett, do you have any questions?
Nope, looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Roach, what are your hours considered? You mentioned that longevity bonus that went away. What are your hours now versus what they were last year? Has anything else changed?
No, it's not, I'm on call 24 hours a day. You know, I am. And I'm there on 24 hours a day, too, when I'm called, okay? And I don't just work Saturdays, I work all week, you know. We'll be in court tomorrow, come on up.
That's right.
Well, we thank you for your service.
All right, see you.
Thank you.
41 years.
Thank you.
Likewise, Patrick.
All right. Janice, Council of Aging. Good evening, how are you?
Good evening, thank you. So I always have to take this opportunity for folks that hopefully are listening at home to give a little overview. I'll make it very quick. At the Upton Center, services are provided to address the many issues that are facing our residents. We have lots of different activities and programs, and we really do emphasize. Looking up there.
Oh, I was looking up.
My halo?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay.
Good answer.
Did you like that? My halo? 24/7? Health, fitness, wellness, all those types of things that we do. We do some really great work there, and I want the residents of this community to know that we're there for every age group. It's not just the seniors. So if there's any needs in town, they call us. We're information and referral, so please don't hesitate to call us. So for the board, I present to you our budget. It's pretty much level funded, except again for the increase for the COLA, and just one adjustment was made for our cleaning services. Other than that, we've been able to stay within budget, applying for grants, being good. Right, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my 3 budgets, since I've been here, the COA has always stayed within that level service budget the last 3 years, and I think a lot has to do with having the formula grant that helps subsidize some of the costs, so.
Right.
Just a lot of good work.
Want to mention that formula grant because, as we know, the baby boomers are coming. So the grant, for those who don't know, it's the state grant that we get. It's based on the number of folks in town that are age 60 and older. Its range is usually between $12 and $14 per senior. Sorry about that. Let's see, we got 14,424 this year. I don't see that number changing. I see the number per senior changing to maybe 10. Now, I've seen it go down as low as 9 per senior. But I think they'll keep it kind of the same amounts per town, but they're not going to increase. So, and we're very, very excited about the anticipation of a new community center. And we're already working on seeing what interesting programs that we can create. And Matthew and I have been working on just how can we make this space really functional so that it's going from 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, so that things are being used to make it really, we're not going to lose the Council on Aging, trust me. We are still very committed to that. But why should we have an empty room sitting there? It's my question.
You said that $12 number changes sometimes from 10 to 12, but you feel like that overall fund of 14,000?
The amount probably will stay the same. I'm projecting. We don't know yet. We keep trying to figure that out. And from that, I use that for the exercise program. I use that for utilities, and it also goes for transportation, which brings me to one concern that we're going to have going forward is our buses is aging as well. So we will be needing to talk about that in the future, because our transportation is just increasing, and we want to continue to provide that service. So.
Does your department have one van or 2 vans?
One van.
One van, okay.
And that is something that maybe we'd like to consider down the road, is having a second vehicle that's smaller. There's no reason, if we have one person going to Reliant in Milford with a 13-passenger van, but then you have to take into account insurance and all those other additional costs. So I don't know if it would make sense. So it's just something for future conversation about that. But yeah, and it's on the road 5 days a week from about 7:30 in the morning, and we usually end our trips around 3:30.
7:30, 3:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maureen, do you have any questions?
Oh, come on, Maureen. Huh?
What year the van is? Don't you want to know?
Ask me,
What year is the van?
Oh, it's 10 years old. What? So 2009? You're making me do math. Ask Derek, I do not do math well.
I think Paul had that on the capital plan for 30 years. So you should be running that van another 20.
Oh, I thought it was 35.
I missed that, I was talking. I missed that, I missed the comment.
Nice you boys to rejoin the meeting here.
Sorry.
He was
We're doing math.
asking me the
We're
year
doing
of the
math.
van,
Oh, the year.
and I said to him, I don't do math, and I said, yes, Derek knows I don't do math.
See, we were doing math, that was the problem.
See,
We were talking about math.
you guys, see, it's all covered.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Norgay?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Good. Very good.
That's it?
That's it.
Thank you.
We'll
Nope,
just
I
do
got
them
it.
after.
I'll take over the rest.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janice.
Let's do them all at once.
Sure.
Let's just try to keep rolling here.
Yep.
Kelly, Town Clerk's Office, would you like to
No, because I'm
present?
going to be here. Dennis has an hour ride home, so.
Okay, all right.
You don't want to go?
No,
I don't care.
I'm going to be here anyways.
Come on, Mr. Westgate.
Mr. Westgate.
Roger, Roger.
Martin Sunday.
Wait to see if the lights go up anyway.
Yeah, no, I couldn't figure out what she was doing over there. It's not getting nervous. She's behind me. Good evening. Hello. Let's see, budget. Okay, I will make this quick. I know you still have much on your agenda. So you have a budget memo from myself outlining the budgets for all of Public Works, and I'm just going to touch upon the changes. Public Works is a large budget, but for the most part, everything stays pretty much the same. There are just a few increases, and I'm going to point them out. So under Highway Division, we have our typical wage increase associated with a 2% COLA. That is in the contractual agreement of the employees. It's based on a 52.2 week. And of course, we have to consider the 2% COLA and the overtime, the working foreman differential, on-call stipends, increases all per the CBA. There is a $24,000 request for an increase in the expenses side, and it's 3 items. Last year, I had asked for an extra $20,000 to be put into the vehicle maintenance of our equipment for preventative purposes, and this is to take the plow blades, the loader, the backhoe, the trucks, the bodies, and to maintain them, sandblast them every so often and keep them up so that we can get longer life out of them. This is the penny-wise, pound-foolish philosophy. And the penny-wise is to not put the money into the preventive maintenance, and the pound-foolish is you replaced the truck earlier at $180,000. So I'm asking for the other $10,000 that I didn't get last year. And if you had a chance, or if you do have a chance, you should stop by the Public Works Department, and I will give you a perfect illustration of exactly where that last $10,000 went to. We had one of the trucks where the body was severely rotted to the point where it was starting to show holes in it, and we took that truck down to a company in Worcester that sandblasted the whole body. We put a new head on it, and we painted the whole body and we replaced some steel. It cost a little more than the $10,000. I had to take some money out of our regular operating budget, but that body's gonna last another 10 years now. And that's penny wise and pound foolish. That's how important that money is. You can save a couple dollars today by not putting that money in the budget, but you're gonna spend so much more by replacing that truck so much earlier. So I requested the other 10. Last year I had asked for 20, and I think we bartered it down to 10, and I'm asking the second part of that request. We still have the loader to do, the backhoe. I have rims that get very costly, as you know, Mr. Chairman, on those large trucks.
Yes.
We have all the plows. So every year I like to keep maintaining this equipment as long as I can and keep it up. I asked for a $10,000 increase in the DPW snow removal account. This is in lieu of, in line, I should say, with what we do every year. We typically, speaking with the town accountant, we try to get the DPW snow and ice account closer to our average expenditure over the course of 5 years or 8 years. So that's all that is. Last year I had requested a $10,000 increase, and we did not put it in there. And then
I actually like the fact that we kind of keep that number a little bit on the lower side, because we tend to have a very favorable free cash position coming into May. So I always look at that as it's a small way to try to keep our base taxation a little bit lower and just spend it out of free cash, where we do have revenue money that comes into free cash. So I mean, I would like to stay at the same number on the snow removal account.
I completely understand, Mr. Chairman. I will tell you that the DOR tries to urge communities to, they understand that this is one of those expenses that you can overexpend. But if you raise it too high, you can never lower it. It's not allowed to be lowered. It would simply go into free cash. You can't, it's not a revolving account, it won't turn over. So communities typically leave it artificially low, but not so low that it eats up a good amount of your free cash, which is vital every year to use to help your capital plan. Otherwise, you have to borrow for your most important capital, which all communities have to pay for every year. So I agree with you that we need to be sensitive about where we put that number, but I don't think that number, speaking with the town manager and the town accountant, I don't believe that number is there yet. And if you can afford to inch it up a little bit for a few more years, I think that the town should do it. But
And if I could just point out on page 59, Dennis referenced that $10,000 increase. The VADAR report, just so we're clear, references a $20,000 increase. And that adjustment was made by the town accountant, per his experience with some of the other communities that he's worked in. So we hear you loud and clear, and ultimately the board would decide what that number should be, but I just wanted to make sure that it was very clear that it was actually in the VADAR report a $20,000 increase.
It's just, the unusual part of that is why the state doesn't ever allow you to lower it down. That's the, peculiar thing. And then, again, our particular position is we always have a strong free cash position, so that would be, Brett or Maureen, do you have any thoughts on that line item?
I would like to see an increase.
You would be in favor of
I would
increasing
be
it?
in favor of an increase, yeah.
I guess, and then Brett, do you have any thoughts on that?
Just a question about the lowering. So the lowering is like year over year, you can't lower it? So like next year, if we said, hey, you know what, we only spent $180,000, let's lower it to $220,000 for next year. Is that the lowering we're talking about?
Right.
yes,
That's
you cannot do that.
It can never go back.
Which is why communities are very careful about their increases. But I mean, we've had this has been a real, one of the milder years we've had, and we're going to go past.
Right.
Because
So
of the ice.
just
I mean, what's the average of the past 5 years,
Right,
right?
so for historical purposes, and the chairman can correct me, but last year we were about $50,000 over. The year before that, we were about $125,000 over, and the year before that was my first year, we were about $140,000 over. And, Paul certainly can speak to the 2 years prior to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may just put this in perspective. You said you can't lower it. Well, you can lower it. You can do whatever you want with it when it comes to that. But as you just did here about 20 minutes ago, before the manager came, it was you declared a snow emergency, which gave you the power to spend in excess of the appropriation. Well, if you read the fine print, I think on the letter that Mr. Manager had, it says, provided that the appropriation was greater than or equal to the appropriation for the prior year, okay? If you lower it and you run out of money, you can't spend without appropriation. You don't have the ability to declare a snow emergency and spend without the appropriation.
It's actually the top part. I put it in the top part of the form that I sent over. It talks about that. Exactly. Thank you.
That would be on the previous, right, or a couple of agenda items back, probably 4.3. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's where we
Well, when you
authorize,
declare-
that's where we authorize.
Snow emergency.
Yeah.
Snow emergency.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're that far off, it sounds like we're $50,000 to $150,000 south of what the number is every year anyway, so increasing it by $20,000 seems like, I mean, we're spending the money anyway, but I don't,
No,
it seems better than taking it out of free cash every year,
Yeah,
because it's an operating expense that we know we're gonna have.
that's right. Had to do it there.
Okay.
Continue. If I may, there is latitude in the snow removal account. In that, to Director's point here a while ago, we lost an engine on one of the trucks. It's a prime snow vehicle. He was able to go to the snow removal account to get the money to repair the vehicle. There's a lot of latitude.
I didn't understand it exactly worked that way, but,
We generally don't use it for, we use it for very specific repairs. You'll find that it's the same in all communities. So we target things that are specific to the strains that the truck takes through snow and ice, like the springs. An engine, obviously, we blew the top part of an engine on a six-wheeler. That's not something that typically happens in its normal operations. It happened in the middle of a snowstorm while it had a full load on it, a plow in the front, and it was pushing uphill. It's that kind of stress that the snow and ice causes that caused the malfunction of the engine. So it's directly related.
all right.
And the last item, through the chair, the last item, I asked for a $4,000 increase. There is a line item that has $11,000 in it called DPW consultant account. And I utilize these funds every year for when we have a four-way stop sign study. Or we're trying to locate property bounds on a road that we're looking to do some work. And $11,000 does not go very far. So I have asked to increase it to an even 15. I've asked for a $4,000 increase. And that's it for highway.
All right, any questions? Brett or Maureen or Maureen? Okay.
Thank you.
Parks and forestry is very easy. There is a slight increase associated with the contractual agreement of the two employees. It's a 52.2 week year, and of course the overtime for parks and cemeteries received the increase to match the increase in the hourly rates for the COLA for the CBA. There is no increase in expenses.
Just going back one line at the top, you have your proposed revenue for driveway permits and street permits.
Yeah, it's relatively even keel with last year.
Okay. Derek, does that go to our general fund?
Yes.
Where does that go?
Yep.
Just wondering how they get captured.
Permits,
For a street opening or for driveway?
street opening.
$100.
Street?
Yeah, I'm gonna have some proposals not too far away for this board to consider making some changes to our street opening and our driveway permits.
What's the driveway permit?
3,000.
And the street opening's 100.
That's an odd contrast.
Mm-hmm.
It should be the other way around, shouldn't it?
Yeah. The street opening should be consistent upon the type of work being done. Should be a street opening policy that says you have to do this type of shoring, you have to put the material in the back of a truck, you can only put dry material back, you can't put wet material back, you can't plate the road without my explicit authority. If you do, you have to ramp up to it, you gotta pin it, and then the prices should be associated with if the contractor opens up the road and then goes to Florida and says, to heck with it, I'm done with it, and my staff has to fix it, that's the cost of the street opening. It's called a bond. And that basically gives me enough money to fix what you left me. That's the way it should be done. It shall be done.
We'll look forward to that.
Headed there. On to water.
Yep.
Water wages are the same. We're looking at a 2% COLA for increase. Fiscal 21 is a 52.2. Of course, the overtime, working foreman differential, on-call stipend, longevity, all these are increased per the CBA. And we have added the full-time operator. As we had discussed the last time I was here, we used some retained earnings to get that full-time operator in. in the interim, which the employee is with us now, and this is now incorporated into the budget. However, you won't see a large increase in some areas. The budget overall for water represents a $10,000 decrease, and you have to look at all of the different items that make up the budget. You have wages, expenses in the pension, capital outlay, debt, extra unforeseen. Every year the debt goes down. Capital outlay is the same as last year. So certain items have gone up, certain items have gone down. Overall, your bottom line has gone down $10,000. And on the expenses side, we had a 10% increase in health insurance. Keep in mind, this is an enterprise account, so it's self-sufficient. Doesn't come off the general fund or taxation. We had a slight increase in Medicare. We had a slight increase in our clothing allowance because we have an additional employee. $5,000 increase in the contract for the IT vendor, and that is for what? I can't think of the name. Kelly.
Retrofit?
Yes, provides us, and a slight increase in the pension contribution, and that represents the increase on the expense side. Any questions on water?
So you have your own, you have a separate IT account or a separate IT vendor from what the town has, or how does that
No,
work?
it's the town vendor.
Okay.
But they're a lot more involved.
Wastewater though, right?
Water wastewater. Yeah, so originally when we contracted with a retrofit, the town was paying the cost of the general fund. And what we try to do with all of our work, if we are supporting water and wastewater work, then we should then appropriately charge those accounts for those services. And that's what we're doing here.
Okay. The only quick question I guess I would have is that we added that additional operator, and when we funded that back at the special, that was half funded out of water, half out of wastewater. Is that how going forward, is that the?
It's 50-50, the same as all of the operators.
Okay. And you don't, you have plenty of revenue to offset that additional labor. All right.
Wastewater. Basically mirrors water for the increases. We're talking about a 2% COLA. Fiscal year 21 is 52.2 weeks. The overtime is affected, and the full-time operator was added, and what the increase in the wastewater salaries represents. On the expense side, it is exactly the same as the water. It is a 10% increase in health insurance, a slight increase in Medicare, a slight increase in clothing allowance for the new employee, $5,000 increase in the IT vendor, and a slight increase of the pension. So water and wastewater are 50-50. So that 10% increase in health insurance represents 5% for water and 5% for wastewater. Same thing with the increase for the clothing allowance. It's split 50-50. And that is wastewater. The expenses, the revenue funds are always the estimates that we use based on 90% collection rate and the last year's trending. So we base our user charges, our sewer connection fees. I will tell you that the surcharge in wastewater is almost non-existent right now because the debt is almost gone. It's down to $10,800. So I don't know if you've heard anything from the water and sewer bills as of lately, but people are pretty quiet because the bills have not been jumping as much as they have been in previous years.
Is it too early we usually set the water and sewer rates sometime in the middle of summer, is it?
No, we do it before July 1 because we want it to go into effect for July 1. So usually around May, I come before the board with a recommendation.
Is it too early to tell if, which way, I mean, is there any chance of those water and sewer rates dropping, or do you think with the demands on infrastructure, they'll be pretty consistent?
There's almost no chance, as long as the budgets continue to increase a penny, the rate will increase a penny because it's for specific users. However, I do see that it not going equal as more customers are coming on for Pulte, and we're starting to receive some heavy revenue from sewer and water connection fees and whatnot. I think next year we might be able to go a little easier on the rate increase.
Okay.
I did a modest projection, I'll tell you right now. I look at the sewer connection fees, I proposed $60,000 for 2021. We've already collected more than that. But you have to be careful about utilizing that revenue as a guarantee, because that's all from Pulte Homes. That company could go bankrupt tomorrow and the fees stop. And if I have used that estimate in my assumption for next year's, I'm in trouble and our budget is upside down.
Very good. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. I think that's all I have for now. Were we gonna ask Dennis to speak about warrant articles?
He's happy to speak to them
All right.
and prepared.
Would you like to speak up first?
I don't have it in front of me, but we have, I don't have the warrant articles right in front of me.
Should.
They're
Should be in the back of that
Yeah.
section you're on.
Keep going.
Oh, that must be off the page, or I'm missing the page.
Did you, no, did you maybe put
It's on
the,
page 51, Steve, in the original
Okay.
presentation.
I think I know there's
You might have
basically two
taken it.
articles.
There's two pieces of equipment
Okay.
for DPW. One of them is a 2001 Cushman. This is a turf piece of equipment that's utilized by the Parks and Cemetery Department. And the equipment is
where are they in here?
vital to how we prep the fields, especially dragging the infields and working with the aerator. This piece of equipment it kind of looks like a golf cart with an extra set of wheels on it and a dump body with a good-sized industrial engine in it. And their Cushman is a brand name, and the replacement for that particular vehicle is extremely expensive. The one that I quoted in here was actually looking at a Gator, a John Deere Gator, which is not as expensive as the Cushman, believe it or not. And then we actually had a demo today where Toro came by with one of theirs that we took a look at. And I was hoping to actually get that cost down. But as it stands right now, we're asking for $30,000 to replace that piece of equipment. It did catch on fire on us last summer. We were able to repair it. It wasn't pretty. So this is the question that usually the board asks me. Dennis, if we absolutely can't do it this year, will you be able to use it next year? Yeah. I'll make it work another year. But it's getting close to complete failure. Yeah, I mean, it's in rough shape. If you saw it, you would see it's in rough shape. And it's a machine that during the spring, summer, and fall, the Parks Department uses every day.
Do you have any guesses to, you say you thought the Toro piece of equipment would come in cheaper? Do you have any idea, any guesstimate as
26, 27. I mean, we're right in the ballpark.
Not a big number.
The Cushman is like $50,000.
Okay.
Very expensive piece of equipment.
I think looking forward, I think the only thing that we have to be very aware of is, there is talk and threat of an override coming. So I'm not sure how we will address that. I don't know if there's any room to make adjustments within our budget, or if that will just...
That's why I tried to be, Mr. Chairman, I tried to be very honest and transparent with the board and said, this piece of equipment should be on it's on our hit list for replacement. If you told me I had to squeeze another year out of it, I would squeeze another year out of it. That's why I said what I said.
Yeah, okay, and the other warrant article, the other piece.
Is a 1963 Clark forklift. This piece of equipment, I can no longer buy parts for. It is currently running. The last time it broke, we couldn't get parts for it, but we found a person who had worked on it for so long that they were able to take the closest part they could get and fabricate it and make it work. But you just can't buy parts for this thing anymore. And we don't use, the forklift is extremely important when you need it, but it has a lot of downtime, which is why I didn't see the need to buy a brand-new forklift. So we're requesting $10,000 for, because a brand-new forklift is about 35 grand, 40 grand. We're requesting, I had the mechanic take a look around, and he said, for about $10,000, you can get a decent 5, 6, 7-year-old used one that will do what we need it to do, relatively the same size as the one we have. Again, this machine is running, so if you ask me, can I get another year out of it? This one I can't answer honestly, because if it breaks again, I might not be able to repair it. Simply because I just can't get parts. It's old. It's older than me.
Just by a whisker, right?
That's old.
You want to talk about these requests one at a time? Would you like to kind of weigh out, now that we have two pieces of equipment? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's coming out of free cash, right?
That's what's proposed.
Right. So we're not appropriating it from taxes. Forklift, definitely. And I've seen the other one work, and I think you need a new one of those too.
I think we had an email discussion about how close we're going to be with demands on free cash versus warrant article requests, so I guess that's what I'm thinking out loud.
This is the whole thing with maintenance, maintaining your equipment and everything. I think they've maintained that forklift for how many years? And the same with the turf truck. What year is that?
2001. It's 19 years old.
Yeah, I think the fork truck.
We've probably gone about, I think the manufacturer suggests around 12 years for those. I think we've gone long past with the
I
manufacturer.
think we have too.
Yeah, certainly the fork truck. What's the fork truck, is it $10,000 request?
$10,000 for a used fork truck, yeah.
Brett, any ideas, any thoughts?
Like
both of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the money in free cash, right? The total from free cash based on the warrant's latest iteration is at $541,070. That would leave us,
We have
if we approve.
778 in the balance sheet right now.
So it'd take us down to like 230, is it 230, Mr. Chairman? Okay, so,
237.
and then we then have to wait until the free cash gets certified in the fall.
September-ish. Yep, late September.
So that gives us, sort of a cushion of 230 if anything goes sideways
So this-
between now and then.
And just keep in mind, what was proposed for free cash, the two engineering articles, one for 104, one for 138. And so, so that's on the positive side. On the negative side, we don't know what our snow and ice deficit will be either. So we need to make sure that we have something in reserve as we head towards town meeting to cover the snow and ice deficit.
We have our annual road paving.
That's in there. That's a raise and appropriate.
Yeah. Separate warrant article.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, frankly, if I look at like $242,000 for engineering to look at putting sidewalks in versus $40,000 on equipment we use regularly, I mean, I think it's a small number relative to the other things we're looking at spending out of free cash. But I don't, so that's, I like to check these things, to your point about some of the other, like, I like to check these off the list. Similar to the accessibility study, it's like if we just, once we know the money, like, just check it, just get it done. Like, it hasn't been done in 20 years, like, we should just do it the same thing with these. Like, haven't gotten any turf truck in 20 years, we're not gonna do it again for another 20 years. The forklift, that's just crazy, but, so.
Okay, let's talk about the road warrant articles, the engineering studies. Let's talk about, actually, let me ask you to jump forward to Russell Avenue. That's one that I'm not particularly comfortable with. I think we had talked about it before.
Excellent conversation.
I know there's a section of the road that's discontinued. I know there's some pressure from one of the residents. It just seems like far too expensive of money to spend, given the predicament that we're currently in.
Sorry, well, I didn't make, you can have mine when I So, when we look at Russell Ave, and we've had a couple of conversations about this, this is a tricky situation, and not one that anybody likes to come in contact with, that's for sure. So what you look at, the very first page you're reading is the email that came to me from our surveyor. You can see surveyor is noting that Russell Ave was first shown and created in 1930 as a recorded land plan. The plan describes a right-of-way 15 feet wide that extends from Main Street 140 straight down, and it stopped. It dead-ended right there. Then in 1950, there was a second recorded plan, and an easement was granted 10 feet wide, starting at Centennial and coming in on the opposite direction. And it widened out to about 30 feet, but then it stopped. Now, in between those two easements is a good-sized gap of property that, if you went out there and looked at it, it looks like a road, and I fixed the potholes, and I sand it, and I plow it, but it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the people who own the properties out there. 4 of them, I would imagine, 2 on either side. And that is actually their land. So we have a conundrum, and we have an issue that we need to take seriously. There are 2 options, in my opinion. And one of them is to consider laying the land out, the road out, the way it is supposed to be done correctly. By the way, that map right there is a good illustration of the 2 easements I just described. And if you look at the very last page, you can actually see.
That's perfect.
Right.
That's perfect.
And that's not ours. And actually, it's 2 homes that own the property, not 4. I'm sorry. So,
Yeah, that's the better map.
so there's a piece of property that we're going on a regular basis that we have no business on, we have no legal rights on, and we are subjecting ourselves to liability every time we do it. One way to do it, the cleanest way to do it, is to relay the road out correctly. And that is the cost that you have in front of you. By the way, there's an error in that cost estimate. Your cost estimate was $124,000, and I had accidentally included oversight during the construction period, and that construction oversight belongs on the construction estimate. So you can reduce that by $20,000. It's $104,000. So $104,000 basically lays this road out per AASHTO regulations and allows it to become a Chapter 90 road. We can have Chapter 90 accept it, we can count the mileage, we get some money back every single year for it, and we have legal rights to the road. There will unmistakably be the sticky part of dealing with all the easements, because if it's 10 feet wide on one side and 15 feet on the other, and we want it to meet road regulations, obviously we want 2 11-foot travel roads. We don't have to have it really fancy and put sidewalks and whatnot, but you have to have enough space for 2 buses to pass each other. So you're looking at a minimum with shoulders, probably 26 foot is what we...
There's not 26 feet between those 2 buildings. That's on, right, on where it goes into Sentinel Court?
Well, this diagram is a plot plan only, and it's not per scale.
I mean, I drove through it. Like,
oh, at the very end?
Yeah.
No, we would have one non-conforming lot. You are correct.
Yeah, I was like, the buildings go right to the edge of the pavement.
No, you are correct.
Okay.
That one section would not conform.
Yeah, the second bullet point says that it's a 10-foot wide easement at Centennial Court, becomes wider at the end. So
That's
coming in from Centennial.
that pinch point.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, there's a
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the road's never really gonna have any sort of flow to it, only because
Right,
it's...
no matter what you do with the rest of it, you still got
You're still...
11, whatever that is, it's not room for 2
Yeah,
cars.
I guess through that building area, you're still down to Actually, I think it's wider than that, but it's not gonna meet 26.
And essentially, it runs through, the way that second section of the road is, it runs through the backyards of those homes.
Right.
You know, it's kind of a very funny layout.
So then the sticky part is that all of those residents down there will have to give the town permanent easements to lay out that road. And it would behoove them to do that. So obviously, we would be telling them that since the town is picking up the fee for the engineering, and ultimately we would pave it, that they should be donating those easements to the town. But you're still looking at $104,000 in engineering and recording.
Sorry?
Can I ask him a question?
And probably about $100,000 to pave the road.
That was going to be my question. So we're going to pay $104,000 to do the engineering, and then what are we going to pay to pave the road?
Well, actually, I think I have a construction estimate, but I think it's really high.
You said 10,000 was moving over to that, so the engineering is 114.
20,000 was moving over to that.
Oh, I'm sorry, 20.
Yeah, so if they have it estimated at 470, that's full depth reclamation, and we wouldn't have to do that. I'm going to say about half that, because I would just do a mill and overlay. I'm going to have to do some alignment adjustments, I'm going to have to change some grades, but I wouldn't put a hammer mill in there.
So
250.
250.
Yeah.
So just $350,000. How long is this road?
Not very long.
That impacts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think I have a length.
7 residents. Right, so it's
9.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean,
I think that's actually a barn right there.
This is a garage.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah, right, so that, right.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, right.
I mean, I think it's...
And these two are on Sentinel Court, so it's not even these two, it's really just
Right.
these
5, 6 of them really.
6 there.
If you delete, right,
Right.
delete the ones that are very...
One of the reasons why the laying out of that short road is so expensive, if you look at page 2, you will see the surveyor's notes where he took note of properties. And the most important part in red, if you look at, you see that most of those properties, the deeds don't close. Well, he has to make them close.
I think this is a problem that we need to address. I just don't think this is good timing, given the other issues that we have. I don't know what we have. I don't have the number in front of me. Typically, have Chapter 90 money plus what we appropriate for Chapter 90 money. I know that you've been patching potholes on this road as it stands, but I just don't see the need to spend, at this point in time, $104,000 plus another, as you said, $250,000 in construction costs. So I would be a no on this article.
But I had 2 parts to my opening statements was there's only 2 clear paths, in my opinion, my professional opinions. Well, that was path 1. Path 2 is then we shouldn't be touching the road. And at a minimum, I would highly recommend that the board ask the town manager to reach out to legal counsel on the legalities of if I assume prescriptive rights and I continue to maintain that road, what kind of a liability are we subjecting the town to? Does Kaufman and Page recommend that we discontinue the road, which takes town meeting action? Just one of those 2. And I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer, and land court's very complicated, but I can't answer that on behalf of Kaufman and Page. But I would highly recommend you get that answer from them.
And why do you think that we couldn't just treat this the same way the other 10 private ways that we plow?
Because you have road that's not road. You have road that's private property, it's like a driveway. Basically, it's like me going over and surfacing your driveway.
And I feel like it's one of those things like we didn't know what we didn't know, and so now we know.
Yes.
Right? It's like we didn't know that this was not a road, right? We've just been plowing it because it's Russell Avenue, you just plow. But now when we looked at repaving it, it's like we don't own that part of the road. If we hit something or damage a car or what have you.
Yeah, the judge is going to forgive us up until when we found all this out.
Right.
But to Dennis's point, this isn't accepted road at this time.
Yes.
Portions of it can only be legally. Just the 2 easements, that's all that's all that is accepted. The 10-foot and the 15-foot easement.
You can't accept something you don't have a right to, right?
So the language might refer to,
Right.
but the legal description.
Right. The deed rules.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot of money to spend for a road with 6 houses on it. I hate to be one of those people on the 6 houses, but I don't know. What are the I mean, I know you laid out the options, but.
I've always been the type of individual where if you find a problem, you correct it, because the only thing we're going to be doing is passing on this issue to the generations after us. At some point, this is going to have to be remedied. And it's no fault of anyone. I mean, to me, it was like a village of managers who used to work at the hat factory, and neighborhoods evolve in such a way, they stopped using horses and they started using vehicles, and so here we are. It is a lot of money, but we're going to correct a problem that will never have to be dealt with again.
But if we get permission from the 2 owners to continue, just like we do with those other 10 private ways we appropriate or we approve each year, I believe it's around 10, maybe more than that, private ways that we plow on behalf of residents. And we do that each year. Wheelhouse Road is one of them, Wheelock Road. There's a bunch of them that we do, and I mean, I would just suggest that we continue to maintain this. We certainly don't want to leave any of our residents, without town services, but we just would need written permission, just like we do with the other private ways.
You would need written permission explicit to the land that's being granted for us to be able to maintain. That's an easement. So at some point, you still have to have a surveyor draw up a reportable plan so that an easement can be taken.
Right,
So
but
the other.
Easement's just a couple $1,000 and we solve the problem. Then we cross the bridge of engineering and laying out the road down the road. But the short-term fix, get an easement, continue to treat the road as we've been doing it for the last 75 years.
I don't think we should have to pay for the easements, though,
I agree with you.
at all.
It's a benefit to those homes.
Huh?
It's a benefit to those homes.
Yes, it
And we
is.
didn't think the town
It's
would.
a big expense to the town.
But like I said, Mr. Chairman, I really wish you'd reach out to legal counsel on this for some advice. If you choose not to move forward and do something, we don't have an action plan for correcting that situation, and I understand that, then we, at a minimum, you should reach out to legal counsel and ask them how we should proceed.
I mean, I support what you're saying, which is, I mean, I understand it's a problem we want to solve for the future, but it's a problem that's existed for a long time. We can't always solve all of our problems. This seems like a very expensive endeavor. I agree with you, we shouldn't leave these people in the lurch and say, hey, you got to start paying a private contractor to come in and plow your road. In their mind, it's their road, so I don't support that either, but it sounds like it's not just a question of accepting it as a private way, because with the other private ways, do we have the easements on the deeds? Is that the difference?
Well, there are a road that's laid out.
Yeah.
Whether it's town accepted or not accepted, it's a laid out road.
It's a laid out road versus this isn't a laid out road, so that's the difference why we can't just say, oh, it's a private way, plow it.
There's a portion of it that it looks like road, but you can consider it lawn.
And that's the question for Copeland and Page is, hey, if we just want to keep plowing this, what exactly do we need to do? Is that what we have
If
to
we
do?
wanted to plow it as is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want to maintain that we have prescriptive rights out there.
Yeah.
And ask Copeland and Page if they could give us some clarification on how we can keep ourselves from being liable.
I was gonna say, would that open up liability for us?
I think we're already liable.
I know.
The $100,000.
Right. I mean, if you look at, this is what it really is,
Yeah.
this picture here. This is what it really is. I mean, the other image shows, what the infrastructure looks like. But, I mean, right now, the way I see this is that we're traversing private land every time we drive down there.
So the short, actually then, technically speaking, the short-term fix, if you really wanted to indemnify the town, would be to block off both ends of that where it is no longer legal. Push your snow in one way, stop. Go around the other way, push your snow in the other way, stop. And that would cover us from a legal standpoint.
I think the police and fire chief would oppose that.
Yes.
But I think your point is well taken. It's,
It is.
it's a legal remedy, so, okay, we'll just
Right, we're gonna
manage
stop,
what we
we're gonna
own.
stop here.
I mean, police or fire can't, how can they say no to that when you don't own a piece of land? I don't see how that's.
But it's all about public safety and where the houses are.
Two dead-end roads, right? Especially that area. Those houses are stacked on top of each other. You try to get apparatus down there, and they couldn't even turn around. They have to back out of there.
I would prefer, if we were gonna go in there, Mr. Chairman, that we let legal counsel say, listen, this is not, we've seen this plenty of times, you simply gotta take care of this paperwork and get these homeowners to sign off, and whatever steps we're gonna do, and then I'll continue to maintain that road. Absolutely.
So the 100,000 would come from free cash, the 104,000, and then the 250 to do the road, could we use chapter 90 for that?
Yeah. I already had it earmarked, and I remember I was gonna pave that road this year.
Right.
So I was getting ready to go out and do a mill and
Yeah.
overlay.
So this is really an incremental cost of $100,000. It's not the 350.
Because we were doing the same, this was,
We were gonna do it anyway, the chapter, we were already expecting to pay that construction, $250,000 cost to redo the road. Now we're just saying, oh geez, we gotta pay $100,000 that we weren't expecting to pay to engineer it.
Right.
Yep, that's a good.
Provided also that all of the residents agree to give the town
Right.
easements for no cost.
Right.
How could that particular road be that expensive to just repave, mill and overlay?
Well, we're gonna adjust some of the widths out there, so there'll be some sections beyond the excavation point that'll be full depth, but it won't be a hammer mill. You won't have a machine go out there and dig, the hammer mills down, 14 inches of soil and mixes it with the asphalt. It'll be a mill and overlay the strip, and then for the box widening, we have to do full depth on those edges. So that's why you're gonna get
It's a
that.
partial full depth.
You're gonna get that, right. You're gonna get that cost.
Curbing, right? Curbing.
It would be cribbing. There's already drainage there, so we would try to utilize what we have out there and just relocate it.
And the other thing, by adding the curbing, now you have lines, like you have sight lines. You know exactly where the road begins and when the road ends, which we don't have now. If you go there now, as you all know, it's just all asphalt. The whole place is asphalt.
Anyway.
Paved at different times too. It's not even one continuous paving.
Yeah.
It's not all
I
paved.
gotta be honest with you, it doesn't make any sense to me to spend that kind of money on that short of a road. Even that particular construction phase of it, to put in curbs and things of that nature.
Sure.
We've got a lot of roads in town that are really torn up pretty badly. I think residents are gonna be bent out of shape if they see this kind of expense on a short road like this. I think the process, no matter how you end the process, I think the process begins with getting the easements from the people. And that should cost us nothing. So I think to Maureen's point.
But you need the lawyers to
Yeah, you need the surveyors
So
to
you're
lay
gonna
it
have
out.
Yeah,
Right,
they have
know what the
to
deeds
sign
are.
it over. deed.
Yeah, we're definitely not paying for the deeds.
Yeah.
Or for the easements. There's no way. So, okay, good, we're not gonna do it. I mean, we would love a reason not to do this. Right,
You got all the legal fees, you got recording fees, you got.
you gotta do that no matter what.
Survey fees, yeah.
Right, even if they don't, so we're gonna you're saying, have them pay for the lawyers and the paperwork and the surveying and all that? Because somebody's gotta coordinate that, right? So I don't,
We usually do all the recordings.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would be.
Because that's the
kinda-
only way to do it. You can't have them all do it on their own.
Right,
Yeah.
it wouldn't, right, because it's a road that you're recording, it's not like, oh, record my,
Cats.
yeah.
When you get down the end and one person
One
doesn't
hundred.
want to.
Right.
I mean, all right, so I've changed my mind. Because I was thinking it was the 350 number, but for an incremental $100,000 that we're gonna use out of free cash, and we already had the money in Chapter 90, we're spending a lot of money in Chapter 90, 562,000, that's our contribution. We get a lot in Chapter 90, We got 560 that we're gonna be at, that the voters are gonna get to vote on, the opportunity to vote on, so I'm fine with putting in the 100,000 to just solve this problem and be done with it. But
Yeah, the other thing to remember is if there is any sort of budget shortfall, we can adjust that warrant article for 562 on road money, that can come down. We've approved that, we've moved that up. A few years ago, we were paying, we were spending 300,000 plus Chapter 90 state money. We moved it to 400,000 a few years back, we went to 5, we went, as money's become available, we've been able to do that. But again, if this is a legal budget year, that 562, understanding we want to maintain our, our asphalt rate, that number may have to come, may have to lower. So, 348. I guess the question is, what to do? I mean, we don't have to decide on it this minute. You want to let this go, and we'll decide when we really finalize the warrant in full? We can do a little more.
You may have questions. If you think of something, send me an email or call me, and I'll try to answer your questions so that...
Can we maybe get a point of view from Coupleman and Page?
We can certainly ask.
Yeah, and just see if they have a quick and easy answer, or just to see what they might say, oh, yeah, definitely do this, or definitely do that, or you don't have to worry about it, or...
Yeah, or at least
I
when
don't
we
know,
get
but I'd
there.
love to just see what...
Sure, and get their lead as far as, what cost, just to get the legal recording parts, what cost should be absorbed by the town, and what costs, as you had said, what cost should be defrayed onto those two homeowners, because it looks like there's only 2 parcels in question, right?
Looks like there's 2 parcels on the section of road that's not really laid out at all. There's no easements on it.
But there's work on every other parcel to get to the 26 feet, so...
That's right. And just, I don't know if you've talked about it when I stepped out, between the 562 and the 347 of Chapter 90 money and article money, in FY21, we'll have an additional $900,000 just for roads. So I don't know if you missed that. And then plus whatever money was left over from last year's road pavement management plan. And again, the Russell Ave had already been earmarked for last year, and that money's still sitting in that account.
All right.
Do you want to talk about the Maple Ave?
Yes.
So the Maple Ave is, I'm under the impression that's sponsored by the economic development. I simply assisted in putting the quotes together for that. But I'm under the impression it's their article.
I think what you're trying to say is you're not promoting this article. This is being endorsed by EDC.
Yes. Right. I mean, I'm not
And
saying...
we had asked about it too, in all fairness, we asked about it too.
Yes, I think there was a certainly reasonable interest from the Board of Selectmen. I mean, we would be, I would, if this is an article that's going to, come before the voters, I would certainly want the board to be the one sponsoring the article.
Right.
I really don't want the EDC getting up and speaking to sidewalks. That's not their purview. Yeah, that's on us, so.
Dennis is here to answer any technical questions.
Sure.
But, this wasn't on his, when he looks at his complete streets listing, this issue hadn't made the list as of yet.
Okay.
So when we took a hard look at this particular road, you're very familiar with it, starts at the 118 and goes all the way over to where the sidewalk begins to go up towards Nipmuc and PBT. It's not a very long road, but it has some really bad hurdles. One, it has railroad tracks. 2, the existing sidewalk that's there right now is non-conforming. It doesn't meet ADA. So the existing sidewalk that goes from 140 to about the railroad tracks would need to be completely redone as well. 3, you have, as you go past the railroad headed towards my office, you have a pond on your left-hand side, and there's only a couple feet of shoulder there. And just up the street from that, you reach the point where the cemetery is, and the topography goes up a good 10, 15 feet. So if you go along that side to widen that road out, you're going to be talking about putting retaining walls in for next to the and designing them next to the cemetery. You're also talking about putting some kind of retaining to extend the roadway width to accommodate the sidewalk over by the pond. Creating curbs, and doing so you're going to make mandatory drainage systems go in. We have to meet MS4. So now I'm going to treat, currently don't have any, right now it's country drainage, it just goes off the road. I'm going to have to actually put infrastructure in. And when I have infrastructure in, I have an outfall. Wherever that outfall is, needs to have town easement on it so that I can maintain it in perpetuity, and I can include it in our NIPD's permitting. On the other side of it, you have the piece right next to the wastewater treatment plant where the stream comes through. That falls underneath Army Corps. That'll be a Chapter 85 license and permitting. And that hollow, towards the very end, there's that hollow where there's the guardrail right after that last house. Again, that is the flood zone. That is Army Corps. So there's no easy solution with putting a sidewalk on this road, which is why it's so expensive. You're looking at, and again, this was $20,000 off because I had included the construction oversight services and recording of all the documentation for all the drainage and all that stuff. I had included in the estimate. So the original estimate, I believe, was $158, and it should be $138. So you're looking at $138,000 in engineering and design and surveying. And then you're looking at a potential and bidding out. That includes bidding services. And then you're looking at another $720,000 in construction.
There's no way to divide that project? I mean, the one thing that I had thought is you can't build from the railroad tracks out to Maple Avenue and then use your Complete Streets grant money to try to apply to repair, because from what I understand, Complete Street grants are for existing sidewalks, not construction of new sidewalks?
No, they are, but they take into consideration housekeeping first. So if you have existing sidewalks, especially in school zones, and they don't meet ADA compliance, that's the low-hanging fruit that the program goes after first, before you start adding sidewalk to roads that don't have them. And then they have a lot of criteria that, even those can meet the threshold if they're certain situations, like there's new parks or playgrounds that were recently installed in that area that were never there before. In other words, there's a compelling case to now have sidewalks in a place where you've never had sidewalks. They take all that kind of stuff into consideration. But for the most part, the Complete Streets program goes after the sidewalks you already have that are not compliant.
Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't recommend just building that one section of sidewalk, you're recommending doing the entire...
There's a couple laws that you have to stay clear of. One of them is we wouldn't be able to touch that sidewalk that goes to the railroad track, because as soon as you touch that, you're responsible for it, all the way to the intersection. 2, every time you do a sidewalk, even from scratch, it has to end at an intersecting road. So you can't propose a sidewalk that just stops. It's not lawful.
Even if you can go across the railroad tracks and get on a sidewalk on that side?
Oh, you're saying take it from Pleasant
to the
Street
track
and stop before the track? Well, I don't know if they would, it's going to connect to it, so they would consider it connecting, and they're going to make you fix that sidewalk.
Because they would consider it connecting, even though we could stop at the tracks.
What you'd have to do, Brett, I know exactly where you're going with this. You'd have to actually come in from Pleasant Street and stop at that first little subdivision.
Yeah.
If you stop there, in the corner, you could legally do it.
Yeah.
Victoria Drive.
Yes.
Victoria, yeah.
So you'd at least get something in there.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that might...
It's an important
better
road.
than nothing, but...
So clear on the Complete Streets, it is on the Complete Streets, but it's ranked. It's like number 23. You know what I mean? There's an awful lot of projects in front of it.
Mm-hmm. I just look at this particular issue as much more of a liability for us in Russell Avenue. I feel it's pretty dangerous having the 2 schools there, all the kids that go down to West Upton, adults that want to walk from the neighborhood to West Upton. I feel like that's, certainly something we need to address, and there's never a good time. It's obviously it's expensive.
The kids walk in the woods. They come up through Valley Tech.
They do.
And they come out right at McCormick's office in the garage and all that stuff.
The kids from BBT do, but a lot of the kids from Nipmuc do actually walk down Grove.
They all drive.
Maple.
Maybe you were around. You might be better. When they put the school there, they raised the elevation of Maple Avenue to accommodate the sewer pipe on the gravel. It seems to me that when that was done, the sidewalk, there was supposed to be a sidewalk put in there. Now, I don't know why or why not, but listening to what he said, I know why they didn't do it.
Now you do.
I ran out of money, right?
Not an easy or cheap adventure.
No matter what you do, if you go call it the north side, if you go to the north side of the street, you got the huge drop off where the grade of the road. And if you stay on the other side, you got the ledge at the cemetery and the pond.
Right, there's some obstacles there.
Has there ever been any incidents on that stretch of road involving a pedestrian?
I haven't been aware of any.
Nothing.
I don't recall anything serious. But, you know, you'd have to talk to.
Good question for the chief, he may have a better idea.
So another one, we should probably take away a question on, maybe for the chief on that one, just to see if there's ever been any, either reported someone got run off the road, or somebody got tripped or had to jump out of the way, or, I mean, not even just like when someone get run over or hit, but like, any reports of any sort of pedestrian-related incidents on that stretch of road?
Yeah, when you stop and think about it, you're gonna go to Maple Avenue. What are you gonna do when you get to, what are you gonna do when you get to Pleasant Street? You're gonna know what, you're gonna take a left? Because there's no sidewalk between Maple Avenue and Valley Tech.
Right, somebody would have to cross the street.
So this is, you know, this is an never-ending story. You know, we're gonna be adding, we're gonna be adding.
I mean, there's a crosswalk there, and then I think that goes up to a sidewalk to Nipmuc. So at the end of Maple Ave, you could cross the street to the sidewalk on the other side, right?
You cross over, right?
There's a
There
sidewalk.
at that intersection.
So I think the next question, I guess, is it reasonable or feasible to think about this expense? Or is it reasonable to think about from Victoria Drive out to Pleasant Street? And what would the difference, you know, again, you're not going to have that answer right now, but is that something maybe we could have you report to us in the next week or two and decide what we want to do with this article?
You just gotta double check and make sure that I can get away with it.
Right, that's probably the big thing, is can you do it?
Yeah, so that'll be a District 3 call. And
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna run this by you, and then pretend we didn't have this conversation. And then when they say, yeah, you can do that, that'll meet your compliance regulations. And I'll have the engineering firm break out that small section. Keep in mind, when we were talking about Russell, you wanted to talk about the engineering and you wanted to talk about the construction. The construction is still sitting here at $720,000. So once you commit $138,000 to the engineering and surveying, you're committing to that $720,000 that you're going to construct it someday in the not so distant future.
And that hasn't been planned the way Russell Ave was planned.
And you have a plan for sidewalks, correct?
We do. We have a plan on our Complete Streets program for addressing sidewalks. It's a really long plan. It's millions of dollars, and it primarily starts in several phases around the schools. It goes after the most important part of it.
And this was not one of them that was on the plan.
It is, but it's way down.
Way down the bottom.
20, it's in the 20s.
So it'd be 50 years worth of funding or something.
I feel like I'm there with that news.
Yeah, this isn't one of your better meetings.
This is not.
Thanks, stuff, but you need to know to make a good decision. You need to know.
Yeah, I know this is, you're doing what you need to do.
Well, it sounds like we have loose ends on both these articles, so I don't think there's much that we can accomplish
On those two.
right now.
On the articles, right, because we can do the budget part of this for the DPW, COA, code enforcement, and the town clerk, separate from the warrant articles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think we actually have the ability to modify or drop a warrant article right up
until the...
till 14
Yeah, so
days
March
before.
10th will be the article review night. So we'll bring in all the boards, committees, department heads to review the
And all the
specific
warrants.
articles.
Yeah, so that'll give us time to sort of get some more.
Yeah, and I think we have a final review of the warrant articles just before the meeting, a couple of weeks before we go.
So we'll execute the warrant at the last meeting in March. That'll be warrant execution.
Yeah, okay.
So
So
we
we've
have
got,
up to that time.
okay.
All right, Dennis, I don't have any other questions.
The only other articles are for water and wastewater. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about them at all, or
We're running late.
suck
and we-
enough air out of the room tonight.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock.
Okay.
We still have our town clerk who's been patiently waiting, and then we have executive session, and we have to reconvene to open session. So I think I'd like to delay maybe till,
I'm good for now.
okay?
You wish you didn't let me go now, huh?
I would have been here anyway, so.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Oh, I know.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
I just had too much fun tonight.
Have?
It was just getting tapping out.
He's got to get up at 3:30 to make the coffee.
Yes, sir.
Almost feel like saying good morning.
I was gonna say, best for last, right?
Close.
That's right.
Are you tricking me? No.
You're tricking me.
I don't trust him.
See you, Dennis, thanks.
Hi, Dennis. Safe ride home. So I think the longer I was sitting over there, the worse my sore throat was getting, so
Oh, boy.
my voice is a little hoarse, I apologize. So I'm here to present the town clerk assistant to the town manager budget. If you turn to page 82, it went from 368 to 405, which is an increase of $36,235. The proposed budget includes an increase of wages of $16,935, and that is due to the compensation plan and the 2% for wages. This is also due to, I'm respectfully, I can't even say it with my soft vote, requesting for you to consider increasing the assistant town clerk's hours from 10 to 20 hours this year. I had proposed it last year, and it wasn't recommended last year. I think the timing wasn't good, is what I remember being said. But I can definitely tell you that the work that she's been doing, just even over the last 45 days, with the March 3rd primary and the voter registration being due February 12th, and as of January 1st, automatic voter registration came into play across the state. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that law, but if anybody goes to the RMV and makes any type of changes, we get something through the state computer that states that they're a new registered voter. And she had over 144 right around February 12th. 70 of them were new, 70 of them were duplicates. But she needs to look at every single one in order to get that done. And it's just taking up all her time to do that on the state computer, where she doesn't really have a lot of, where I feel like I'm trying to make sure that she can stay at the state computer to get that stuff done, and I'm doing more of, the day-to-day filing and assisting the residents at the counter.
I don't have that breakdown in front of me, so it's $16,955 was the increase.
Total increase, $12,455 of it was for the additional 10 hours a week.
Okay, $12,455 is the additional 10 hours a week, okay. And right now, the compensation is broken down between planning board hours.
Yeah, she works 10 hours for me, 15 hours for the planning board, and 10 hours for conservation. So that's a total of 35 hours. And so, but the planning board, the 15 hours that she's in with the planning board, again, I'm not saying that we shortchange planning board. She gets her work done. She's very diligent. As a matter of fact, I just have to say, she stayed till 4 o'clock on Friday to process those 144 voter registrations because we need to get it ready for Monday, this coming Monday. So she does the work that's needed to be done, but there are times of the year that planning board gets shortchanged because she's helping me.
So that will bring her to 40 hours a week, is that what the?
She would give up the 10 hours at conservation, so she would still keep her planning board hours of 15, so it would be 35, and then she does ZBA, which is, I think, equates to 2 hours a week, give or take, depending on what's happening for that week.
So we're moving some wages there, but she's dropping some hours elsewhere.
Correct. Her wages, her wages will increase overall because she gets paid more as an assistant town clerk than has the clerk to the Conservation Commission. So the cost, the overall cost to the town, in all honesty, is somewhere that have to be found to take the 10 hours for conservation. So,
We're not like saving that money, right? We're just,
Moving it around.
right, it's still a net increase of 12 because she's not going to do that work, but we're still going to pay somebody to do that work.
correct.
Right.
So, and then elections, my favorite topic lately. So we have our state primary in September as well as our presidential election. So I increased the budget to 18.2 to assist with that. Technology, just as a reminder, it looks like it's going up from 124 to 131. But keep in mind, the 124, we approved $7,500 at the November town meeting as raise and appropriate. That's not reflected in that FY20 number of 124, so it's a minimal increase to technology, but that's allowing us to continue with our hardware and software work up to date.
That election number moves when you have that extra election, right?
Exactly.
And it comes back.
Yeah, this past year it was 11,800, yeah. No, because I included the primary in that, yeah. There's 1 year that you have one election.
Okay.
I'm asking for an additional $550 in town clerk expenses. Going to conferences and training sessions and professional development those costs are going up, and I haven't asked for an increase over the last couple of years, so. And then an increase of $700 for the registrar of voters. The last couple of years, if you've noticed in the census forms, there's surveys that go out. This past year, we sent out the cable survey. Last year, we sent out an open space open space land use survey. And we get close to 1,000 people that return those surveys. It's like 45% of the people when we send out the surveys. And that $700 is just covering the cost of mailing and printing those surveys to go out. I don't know who's going to approach me next year in January, but somebody usually approaches me and says, let's survey the town on this issue and see where it goes. And then for the building budget, I'm asking for an increase of $5,000 to cover the cost of utilities and preventive maintenance for the building. That's it, unless you have any questions.
Utilities is the only one, and I know I asked it last time, so it's kind of a redundant question. I think we had this question when the fire chief was in. Just seems like the utility bills just keep going up. We're not getting those energy credits that we bought. It just, it seems like an unfortunate increase to our budget.
Do we get any answers from them at all on why we haven't received?
Last time I checked with them, I was told by, I believe it was Nexamp, that the DPU still has not given them their final approval to turn the solar array field on. The DPU, so there's really in the DPU's hands, that they're like 18 months behind. So that, again, I had asked that question last fall, so probably about 6 months ago now. Certainly can follow up with them and see if there's been any change, but to this chairman's point, we were expected to receive almost $30,000 in energy credits by signing that agreement. Now goes back to 2017.
Right. Is it retroactive? Just saying.
Well, they're not collecting any energy right now, so I don't think that's going to help. But and we started to notice it last year with the utilities across all of our facilities that we had been funding our utility line items, and what we started to realize by level funding each and every year, we were falling behind. So we were running in the red, $2,500, $3,000, at each location.
And that's why there's always so many year-end transfers, trying to juggle to pay all the utilities. So by being a little bit more proactive, hopefully we don't have those transfers at the end of the year.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
No?
No questions? No questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Easy, thank you. You just want to keep going.
Looking at that clock. Try to make up for a little lost time.
I just think you did a really good job.
Oh, thank you.
All right. We are on to recognition. Does anybody have any recognition?
Yeah, we got to vote those.
That's right. My mistake. So we have DPW, COA, code enforcement, and town clerk. I will accept the motion.
I move that we approve the DPW, the COA, code enforcement, and town clerk's warrant articles for their budget.
I would say just the budget, not the warrant article. Just the budgets. Yeah.
Yeah, just the budget.
Just the budget. Second, the budget approval.
And make that unanimous action on the budget.
Thank you.
All right, on to recognition. Does anybody have anything? Brett? Nothing?
No.
All right. Town manager's report.
So I will be brief, given the time, but I just wanted to bring to your attention that we reported this about 3 or 4 months ago. Kelly had applied for a grant at the state level for cybersecurity. As you know, cybersecurity is a major threat these days. Charlton was hacked and I think had a $400,000 exposure. So Kelly had applied for a grant. We received the grant award, and we have all of our 70-plus employees taking cyber security awareness training that started this past month. So we plan on continuing that effort, again, to try to strengthen our cyber awareness. As I reported via email last week, officially we did get the $25,000 state grant through the Attorney General's office. That money will be used to demolish the structure at 6 Main Street. And then we went back out to bid a second time. We didn't like the bid numbers the first time, which were approximately $75,000. We went back out to bid and were able to get the lowest bid at $57,000. So the total exposure for the town would be about $30,000, actually about $35,000 total exposure to the town to do the asbestos survey and then to ultimately demolish the property. So I would expect probably within the next 4 weeks you'll see some action across the street and see that building come down.
That's awesome.
Thank you. As far as personnel, again, it's something that we continue to work on. The chief of police, Chief Bradley, is working on promoting 2 individuals to sergeant. So as you know, we've had 2 sergeants who retired this past fall. So this month they're taking an exam, and then they're going to go through an assessment center with a bunch of other chiefs, and then identify 2 individuals worthy of promotions. That being said, we've also lost another police officer, so we have another vacancy in our staff. We just hired 2 police officers, as you remember in our last meeting. We just had a swearing-in ceremony, so I would expect that the chief will be working with Sandy over the next month or so to advertise again for the upcoming vacancy. On the positive side, the fire chief, again, is working with fire chiefs in the area, and they went through an assessment process and were able to identify 3 new full-time paramedics that we're going through the onboarding process right now. I don't think any one of those have the firefighting academy under their belt just yet. Excuse me?
No, you're correct, they don't.
Right, they're all seasoned paramedics, so we're gonna have to send them to the Mass Fire Academy, which is free of charge, as I understand it. And then lastly, so we held a meeting, Janice and Sandy coordinated a meeting, primarily focused on, with the Disability Commission, on open meeting law, public records law, and workplace conduct. So that was, so then we sent out a broadcast to all our department staff and our boards and committees, and I think we had about 20 individuals who attended that meeting. There's a follow-up session, training session, that's going to take place on March 9th in this room at 6 PM. So again, trying to train as many of our staff and our board and committee members on how to apply the open meeting law, how to apply the public records law, and then lastly, you know, what's some good relationship skills relative to workplace conduct. So KP Law is doing that training. I will end there. If you have any questions.
It's unfortunate news of losing another police officer.
It is, again, you know, I keep talking about what keeps me up at night, and it's personnel, you know, thinking about today and thinking about tomorrow, where we need to be. I mentioned in the past that, you know, I predict in the next 5 years that at least all but one of our department heads, if they choose, could retire within the next 5 years. So, you know, it's all the way from our frontline staff, all the way through our executive managers. You know, we really have to think about some long-term personnel planning. So, you know, this is becoming a recurring theme. And again, like I mentioned before, it's not a recurring theme just in this community. We're seeing it statewide as well.
Okay. Any questions?
Awesome work on 6 Main Street, saving us all that money.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Good news.
Yeah, really good.
Nice to see green grass there.
Yeah.
Or at least dirt.
Grass, are they gonna plant grass? In the spring, is he gonna plant grass?
They have to gravel top.
All right, new business.
Forever?
No, just
Anything under new business? On a roll.
On a roll.
Good.
Anything under new business? All right, same look ahead topics we've had, town hall use policy, discuss fire and EMS advisory committee, senior tax relief policy, discussion on earmark funding requests. Derek and I did have some discussion on senior tax relief policy, trying to see what tools we currently have in place. We do have an earmark warrant article to see if we need to add any additional clauses to chapter, I think it's chapter 59.
Tracy, excuse me, Tracy is prepared to talk about what we currently have. She's been reviewing it and has a pretty good idea that we're in pretty good shape with what we already have on the books.
Okay. All right.
So we'd expect Tracy to come in on March 10th to discuss that article on the warrant.
All right. Public comment. Is there any public comment?
Yeah.
All right.
I do have a comment. Can we go over the next 3 weeks of meeting schedules? There's a lot of action that's happening out there. As you know, the schools, the regional school district is going to be meeting on March 9th to certify their budget. On March 11th, Finance Committee is going to be meeting with both BVT and the regional school district to listen to their proposed budgets for FY21. And then on February 26th, the Finance Committee is also scheduled to meet with the Board of Health as well to discuss solid waste and recycling. So just a little direction on our end would be helpful if you want us to post for those meetings, or if you plan on holding separate meetings to discuss those items or anything else. But it would be helpful to know that in advance.
I would like to attend the FinCom, the Finance Committee with the 2 schools.
So that I'll post.
Brenda
said he wants to.
So that'll be March
11th.
I'll post.
And what was the one on the 26th?
Board of Health?
The Finance Committee is going to invite the Board of Health to discuss solid waste and recycling.
Yeah, I'd like to get in on that too.
Yes.
Post?
Yep. The only, let me just throw out this idea. Last year, we actually we posted with FinCom, and the school committee's present as well, at the budget presentation, which will be March 9th. And that gives us an opportunity, to really be there and ask. That way we're getting, we have no interaction to speak of with our school committee, and that's our best chance for interaction and to ask questions, in a public forum to discuss that. And we did it that way last year, so I would be curious if you'd like to attend that meeting, which we may still have to attend the meeting then on the 11th for the BVT budget presentation. but it would give us
So
a...
you're saying the meeting on the 9th, where the school committee's certifying their budget?
Right. Which we were there, I thought, last year, we had a joint meeting with all the, with all the committee
Yeah,
members, so
we
I'm gonna be
we
there.
definitely did.
I mean, I think it's important for us to be there.
Yeah.
So,
Is that, yeah, I had forgotten, we did that last year, though, I remember everybody sitting around the table.
I'm sorry, that was a multi-board meeting, and I
Right.
know the school committee is actually looking to maybe do another multi-board meeting, because it was the members of Mendon was there as well.
Right, they for sure were, yeah.
Yeah,
It was the
so
amended school committee.
it wasn't so much the public hearing, it was more of the multi-board meeting that we sat around and the superintendent did the presentation.
Right. That was his original presentation where he gave us the three options.
Yeah. Did they do that this year? Are they not doing that, or when would that?
They haven't done that, and I think that's to Kelly's point, they're talking about doing a multi-board
They
meeting.
talked about it, and I think they even talked about doing it before the budget hearing on May 9th, but we haven't got any done.
March 9th?
March.
But I haven't.
I mean, that would make sense, that they have the meeting before they certify the budget, but.
Well, they can, in their eyes, they can always certify high and then go low. We certify it low afterwards. So.
Yeah, so I'm with you, so I think we should, short of that multi-board meeting happening, because you're right, I had forgotten that we sat with that whole group.
Right.
So if they're not going to do that, then the 9th would be the time that
Time
we would
to go
sit with the
then.
board,
And
or
you
the
get
school
it-
committee, and
Yeah, and I think you get a better perspective, there's a lot of questions that are asked, things that, you may or may not think of. I think it's just more comprehensive than what we get typically downstairs.
Yep, I totally agree. It's
So,
going to be
okay.
a big school year, so with 2.5 override coming, it's.
Okay.
So we will post for March 9th.
March 9th.
Over at the high
They're
school.
asking for it, we should be clear.
Right.
Okay.
So I think in the short run, I guess if I'm hearing correctly, we'll post for the 26th, which will be next week.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
What time would that be?
March 26th.
February 26th. February 26th is the meeting with Finance Committee and the Board of Health.
Right.
They usually kick off around 7:15.
Okay. March 11th?
No, then it would be March 9th.
March 9th, right.
Right.
March 10th is the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and March 11th is the presentation of the school and finance.
Right, with both school districts.
In conference.
Busy week?
Busy time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll have to determine that the 11th.
I was going to say, we'll figure it out
That
based on.
that might be a little much.
Better to post and not be there than not have the option to go, so.
Absolutely.
Right.
Always cancel.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, so that's helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Yep. And if you have any feedback from school committee or any word on the budget, just let us know ahead of time, so we'll have a better idea of what to expect. All right, nothing problem with that.
I mean, they sent their initial budget over, right?
They have not sent me their budget.
Oh.
I actually asked that question to their business manager today, and I'd like to see a copy of the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumor, and I was told it was a first pass budget. I was actually at the last, I guess I'll share that. I was at the last meeting, which I believe was a week ago Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall the date. And again, it was a first pass of the budget.
Yeah.
But they did talk about expanding, spending up $2.5 million to, I want to say, just shy of 39 million. So.
Right, which is like $1.5 million increase over last year. That's what I seem to have heard, but,
Upton's Street.
How
right.
much is that per kid?
I thought students went down.
So is that sort of where they were starting?
He said first pass,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm curious. They have another meeting, I think it's sometime next week. They have another meeting, so I don't know if that'll be a second pass of the budget and it'll be revised numbers, I'm not exactly sure. So maybe I should send off an email. I'll attach everybody, send off an email to the school committee and see if we can get
Requesting the budget.
Get some
some sort of insight
Yeah.
as to, is
Ooh,
it,
clarification, I think
Yeah.
that's a lot.
is it a rumor or is it fact? We don't
Right.
really know where we stand.
It was in black and white, 1.4 million.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've seen it in writing, so I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, am I the only one that saw that?
We've all received copies secondhand. We've all received copies secondhand of their proposal, but the school has not reached out to anyone in this building and said, this is our budget proposal. So just so you know, when we issued our budget recommendation in mid-January, both the superintendent of Mendon Upton and the superintendent of BBT received a copy of our proposed budget. Neither one of those two schools have returned that favor.
Seems like it's pretty late in the budget process.
You think they would at least send us their first pass budget proposal?
Well, all right.
So, where did we get this? Sorry, I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Paul Flaherty brought those in, the chairman of the finance committee.
Yep. They did hand them out, and again, I was at that meeting. They spoke to it, but again, it was first pass, so I'm not sure how to interpret that. But in any event, we do have to reconvene to open session, so we can actually discuss this a little more, but while we're on a roll, and I know Glenn is getting nervous back there, so we are going to go into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section number 21, exemption number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declines that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the body, and also Mass General Law 214, Section 1B, Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 220, to discuss financial assistance to a resident in need. After the executive session, we will reconvene in open session and address agenda item 11.1. All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Steve Metellian, aye. All right.
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, 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 aye.